Welcome, friends and fiends, to the RedDeathMask stream. How's is I saw the audio working. Mic's working. Okay, let's try some of this.
A man named Dr. Bernard Hayes.
Bro,
Okay.
why even show the picture?
I know.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check. Welcome. We are here today to check out some of the work of VerdantVoidling. And he's got, or they, I think I'm pretty sure it's a dude. They have multiple stories here, and they wrote one that I read previously, which was the succubus I summoned is defective. And it ended up being quite funny. It was a good time, but it was also just an interesting horror concept and a fun sort of like anonymous post style story. And so I wanted to read more of their stuff, and they have like a few narrations that other people have done of their stuff. They have some like a SpongeBob themed story, and even a poem. So I was just gonna kind of do a spread of a few of their different things. We're gonna start off with listening to one of the narrations, and then we're gonna read a couple of their stories, and then and hopefully it'll be a grand old time. What's up, rude dude? Yeah, so today that's the plan, is to dive into the horror stylings of VerdantVoidling, and I'm also excited because they have a horror poem, short horror poem, and so as somebody who majored in creative writing and poetry, I love poetry. I don't get to talk about it enough on the channel, or just I want to read and cover it more when I can, and I think it's really cool that they're not just doing short stories, that they bothered posting still a horror theme, but poetry. I think that's super cool. And what the great thing about poetry as opposed to even a short story is the way that a short story is bite size, like you can read it in 30 minutes. Well, a poem you can read in 5 minutes, and sometimes they have just as interesting concepts and everything else, like the Raven comes to mind, or like sometimes they're these big epic stories like Dante's Inferno, and so some of the best horror is poetry, at least, or at least is a like epic poem. And so I've always I really want to find more stories that utilize like at least poetry in parts of it, or uses the form of poetry as a method for telling a story, which you can do. It's maybe a little more arduous, but plenty of people can make really awesome stuff. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Howdy, rude dude. Thank you for stopping by. Anyone else who's watching the stream later, thank you. And then thank you, of course, to VerdantVoidling for letting me read their stuff. And I hope that you end up watching this later, and hopefully my covering it helps. Also, I just want to say that the live show looked really fun. I think I was really happy, and I didn't know this until getting farther through the episode, but that I really liked that they finally read stories that they wrote, that Hunter wrote the one and was playing the trick on Isaiah, and then uh they read Isaiah's one about the hoarder Ozzy, called Ozymandias or whatever. That is that was awesome, and both stories I think were actually really strong in kind of different and unique ways. Um, nice, yeah. Well, we're gonna get into it here, rude dude. So yeah, I'm excited, and I just think it was awesome of Isaiah and Hunter to finally, be like, we're gonna read our own stories, and then obviously Hunter's went really well tricking Isaiah. That was fucking hilarious. And then the last story too about the coal miner. I think that writer is obviously just really talented. That wrote that story and the story about like the headhunters. The kind of Blood Meridian esque story. But yeah, I was really I think what I liked the most about it is I was expecting the father when he comes back. Like I was expecting him to come back, but I was expecting it to just like be a ghost. I was expecting it to be like, a ghost or like a manifestation of like the mother's desire to have him survive. And I liked the whole like you could touch him and you could feel him, and the story didn't do the thing where it was like, but then when the uncle came over, he disappeared or something. But no, he was like a real tangible entity that everyone in the town could see, and but they all knew there was something wrong with him. I thought that was like a really. I just think that a lot of, you know, maybe less confident writers would have maybe taken it in a more like ethereal sort of way, but I thought it was so cool to have it just be this. No, it's this creature that, or not even really creature, but it's this entity that essentially lived in the dark of the mountain and is like puppeting his body, maybe, or is, whatever, pretending to be him. But yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I definitely want to read. I'm sure they'll read it on Creepcast, so maybe I won't read it on my stream, but I want to read more of that Rider stuff, just because yeah, both those stories have been bangers thus far. So yeah, and I mean I loved the first story a lot, just about the woman like owl hunting them, and I like that both stories. I feel like most people, for how like beautiful and good the writing is, I feel like a lot of people would have built those out into like a multi-part things, and I like that he kept them fairly short because it was just oh, no worries. Hello, hello. No worries about your messages not showing up. But yeah, I liked that like the owl just starts killing them all, and it's just kind of that quick ending. Yeah, I know that there's so many stories that I read or that I look at where it is some sort of like old western type setting, and it just people just really are taking their time describing every little thing, and I just think both stories, like the pacing was so just perfect and awesome. Yeah, that's all. Oh, you got to go. Hell yeah. No, I mean, I was certainly jealous I was not there. It looked like a lot of fun. But at the same time, I'm just glad that they, released it soon, and that we got to watch it. And I love that Hunter just sat down too and wrote that story in like a day with someone else or however he did it. I just think that's really cool too, because it's like, I don't know, some writers and I feel like some creative people just work better like that if they just have like a deadline and they're like, oh shit, well I was supposed to write something, and so they just do it at the last minute and then somehow it turns out being really awesome like that. I don't know. I just feel like sometimes I work that way too, where I feel like I need, I need that kick in the ass as a writer. Just creatively, I need to be put inside of a box. Um. Oh, nice. That's awesome. The vamp guy he wrote the story with. That, yeah, that's super cool. Yeah. Hopefully you I'm not a bot, maybe. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got the name right. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I wondered, because obviously the live show couldn't last that long, but it's like hopefully people got to uh, meet other writers and like exchange ideas and information. You know what I mean? And phone numbers and stuff like that. Like that's one of the main reasons I want to go to the live show. Like, yes, of course, seeing Isaiah and Hunter like perform the podcast would be amazing. I've been to other live podcast shows. Oh, okay. It's Professor Creepin. Okay. I didn't know who you were. I mean, I assumed you were somebody I knew, but um just not my main. Yeah, no worries, no worries. But yeah, I think that going to the live show would be I would be equally as interested in just meeting other fans and other creative people who watch the podcast, because I feel like that is where I would probably like have the most fun. Yeah, like I went to the Bad Friends podcast. That was super fun. Live. I've been to Therapy Gecko live, which wasn't quite like a pod. He didn't quite do his like podcast. He did it was different. He interviewed people in the audience, but that was really fun, really really fun. So I'm definitely a fan. I know some people are like, why would you want to go see a live podcast? But to me, it's you know it totally, like, the format works without an audience. Like, of course podcasting works just when it's like two people having a conversation, but then it also works, it's just different, but it works with an audience too. It's super cool to see. So yeah, I'm sure they did cut some stuff out. And I was actually hoping maybe on the Patreon they'll just release like the full unedited show at some point, but or maybe like a, I don't know, like a deleted scenes kind of montage, like if there was a lot of, but I imagine they kept all the kind of good stuff in, it was probably just like technical difficulties or whatever, the stuff that they cut out. I will say that I do think Isaiah needs to get he was better on this show than the first show in my opinion, but he keeps doing he keeps doing this thing where he tries to be like the stick in the mud both to Hunter and the audience. And although like I kind of get what he's doing, as like, he's trying to be like the opposite of Hunter in some ways, I do think that like Isaiah needs to kind of I don't know, he needs to get a little bit looser and have a little bit more fun on stage. Like, we want, like, the audience wants to see him having fun too, and I feel like so often he does the thing where he's like just quiet, and he's like, really, really, you know what I mean? And it's fine, and I'm not like hating on him. I'm just saying that I think I think as he maybe does more live podcasts and stuff, like hopefully he'll get a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more like, you know, yeah, just wanting to, rather than like shake his finger at the audience, just wanting to be like in on the joke, I guess. Yeah, it wasn't insane. Well, that's one thing I was gonna say. I was gonna say, well, the line looked really long, regardless. Which, you know, that can happen, and especially on like Halloween, I could see how um it would be kind of crazy. What I was wondering, if maybe the venue, like, I don't think it was necessarily Hunter and their fault, but they just their you know, I like, it was a sold out show, obviously, but I think maybe the venue's not used to like seating people early. Like, they should have had the doors open like 2 hours before the show and been seating people, because, you know, it takes time. It takes time to get people in, and then they want to stop at the merch, and they want to, you know, get concessions if there are concessions, and so it's like all of that can take so much time. And some of these like mid-sized venues, kind of like that theater was, it's like they're just they're only used to being open an hour before the show, and I felt like for that show in particular, you know, they just should have opened probably a lot earlier. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And everyone got there early too, because they were just like excited, and that's what they were doing for Halloween. So, yeah, football team that was barking. Yeah, that's awesome. That's hella funny. I love that. Hoo, 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 hoo. Yeah, that was, and that's kind of like what I mean by, just like with Isaiah and Hunter. Like, Hunter was egging you guys on, I feel like, a lot, but then like Isaiah would just be like, you know, like, not stop it doing that, but he would just be like animals or whatever, you know. um yeah. Yeah, see, but yeah. And that's, I mean, like, any shows where there's like weather or something, like they said it was raining, it's like, I don't know, it can take longer to seat people, but yeah, that was just, I don't know. I think that probably, because these shows, right, like they might know that the podcast is big, but they don't think, you know, I don't know. I just think sometimes these venues underestimate the dedication of the fan bases, you know what I mean? And so they just think it's like normal people going to a normal show, and it's like, no, all these people are dressing up. They're all going to get there early. They're all going to, you know. And so because of that, they just, you know, whatever, it just took them longer than expected. I don't know, but anyways, that's enough chit chat for now. Let's get into the narration of, I this is we might listen to two narrations. I don't know. I might see how long the other one is, but this is, I checked the weather obsessively from VerdantVoidling, and it's Haunted Tales is the channel, but then it's also narrated by Skodo the Reaper. So shout out to, I'm not sure if that Skodo is Haunted Tales, but shout out to both of them. Let's give it a listen.
You're listening to Haunted Tales with You're listening to Haunted Tales with Skoto the Reaper. I checked the weather obsessively by VerdantVoidling. The sun was just beginning to set beyond the mountains which encircle my hometown when a spring rainstorm popped up. I hadn't expected rain. The forecast had been showing clear skies all day long. It started as nothing more than a drizzle, and quickly became a deluge, before subsiding back to a drizzle. As the downpour waxed and waned all around, I was disturbed to hear a sound which was not born of nature. It was the sound of somebody trying my back door's handle. The torrential rain slowed long enough to hear a slow, low, disappointed voice say,
Stop, I
I felt panicked. Somebody was trying to get into my house. I was allowed only a second to grapple with this realization before I was wrenched back into the present by the sound of thunder slamming itself against my side door. The knob attempted to turn uselessly against its locked mechanism. The voice came again, this time sounding devastated, as if encountering a locked door while trying to gain entry to my home were one of fate's cruel tricks.
locked up nice and proper.
My heart skipped a beat at the sound, and it skipped another when I turned to look at my front door. Unlocked. I ran for the door. I doubt that I'd ever moved that fast before, and I'm sure I could never do it again. I slammed against my wooden savior in haste, the lock sliding in with a clunk, immediately answered by a thunderous impact which shook the frame of the door, if not the whole house. Picking up myself from where I lay several feet away from the door, I saw that it had remained intact. Even the glass portion in the middle of the door was unmarred by the titanic force which slammed against it. I began to process what I was seeing beyond the glass. The thing which had been trying to enter my house had its face pressed up against the transparent barrier. It was a putrid mass of writhing flesh. Hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny tentacles comprised the bulk of the face. It had the eyes of a snake. Its tentacles moved in perfect synchronization to reveal a mouth filled with row after row of way too many teeth. Its teeth were round and dark in color, like stones worn smooth by a river. It spoke again, this time consumed by animal rage.
All locks the upsy. Good, good, good.
After its outburst, the creature took to silently leering at me, with only enough of its head exposed to allow its eyes.
Hold on. So we're already well through halfway of the story, which this is just a quick little short creature features what it seems like, which I wasn't expecting with the name of the story, but I am confused. I'll loxy up the good. I'll loxy up the good. Okay. I was curious. I mean, I know he was doing a voice for the monster, but I wasn't quite sure what he said, so yeah, it's interesting. So are we to assume then, and I know I could just listen to the whole story, but so are we to assume that he checks the weather obsessively because this monster is brought on by like the rain, maybe? Because that's what he says. It said he didn't think it was gonna rain, but then a spring rain kind of came out of nowhere, which that can happen certainly like in the spring, but also just I feel like when those summer storms do happen, they always kind of, or spring to summer storms happen, they seem to kind of come out of nowhere, right? Because the weather's finally getting nicer, and then they just kind of sneak up on people. So I like that, and I like that as a setting. So often things are set in the fall or around, things are cold and whatever, and I think sometimes stuff is more, I don't know, it can be more frightening if let's say if it's warm outside and then you get a chill down your spine, or then you see something that freaks you out, and it's like because the heat or the warmth can like lull you into a false sense of comfort, you know what I mean? And so yeah, I just think that like seasons in a story can add an aesthetic that people don't always think about, but it's something that to me, like, I like the idea of summer horror, you know. I think it's, you know, it's hot, it's sweaty, it's messy. Like I just like that aesthetic, you know.
Many teeth. Its teeth were round and dark in color, like stones worn smooth by a river. It spoke again, this time consumed by animal rage.
All locks the up thee. Good, good, good.
After its outburst, the creature took to silently leering at me, with only enough of its head exposed to allow its eyes to see me. We stayed like that for a while. The thing leering at me with cold fury in its eyes. Me staring back with cold piss in my pants. Eventually the rain subsided, and that devil disappeared from my doorstep. I had thought that would be the end of it. 4 months had gone by, and I was beginning to approach the idea of letting go of the horrific experience I'd had. It had been almost an hour since I had last checked the weather, and I was thinking of going for 2. That's when I saw the announcement of a pop-up storm for my area. All of my doors had been staying locked for months, and that day was no different. The thing made its rounds, growing in volume corresponding with its rage. When it had checked all of my doors and found its efforts frustrated, it took to leering at me just as before. It's been 7 years since then. I'm a morning person by necessity. That's when I do all my shopping, gardening, working, and general outside stuff. I check my weather app every 15 minutes. These are precautions I've taken, as I don't know how it all works. I don't know what would happen if I were away from home when a surprise storm rolled in. I don't know what this thing even is. I do know one thing, though. After 7 years of maximum effort attempts, the thing now only bothers, half-heartedly, to check the front door. Finding no success, it sighs and goes to sulk in a corner. After 7 years, it's giving up.
Well, that's fun. Does anyone else kind of wish the creature would have gotten in? Because especially with this force that it exerts on the front door, like it does have power. Maybe it's like a vampire, right? Vampire rules, like it can't cross the threshold, so it can bang on the door. It can whatever. It can scare you through the window, but it can't actually open the door like without you opening it for it or whatever. So maybe I'm thinking, you know, something like that, but with the amount of force that it had, and then the fact that it's like this creepy, just animalistic monster, I almost wish it would have like broken a window or gotten inside. Yeah, but I mean, either way, just a nice little, almost like a vignette, right, of just like a scene. And then the other thing I was gonna say that I like about this is it takes what is like a very I guess not even like phobia or fear, but you could say like there's people out there that are obsessed with the weather, right? For one reason or another, maybe they hate driving like in the snow, or maybe they just hate being cold, you know. So there are people who are more kind of weather obsessed, right? And the thing I was naturally thinking about was like old people, right? They're always talking about the weather. They're always, you know, oh gosh, the weather's been like as soon as it even gets kind of cold outside. And I live in Colorado, so I mean, we have seasons here. Um, most places have seasons, but I'm just saying that, like, when it gets cold, it can get cold. But for like old people, it's like as soon as the weather changes even a little bit, they're like, "Oh, it's horrible, it's awful," and you're like, "It's really not even that bad yet." You know what I mean? Or just stuff like that. But I like that it's taking what is kind of a normal whatever to be obsessively checking the weather, right? That's a very normal human thing that a lot of people do for various reasons, right? Like, there's plenty of people who have to do it for their work or for, um, and so it's such a human, it's such a common thing to obsess about the weather, right? I think that's something that humans will always do, whether or not we're all stuck inside uh, on VR headsets in 100 years. Like, I still think people will obsess about the weather because if whatever it's raining, then the solar panels, aren't going to get as much power, and then people won't be able to live in the metasphere as much, or what, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, the weather always it's pervasive, right? It affects everyone's life almost equally. Yeah, and so I kind of like taking something as just as common as that and just attaching uh, a horror element to it. And it's only when there are these like unexpected storms, right? It's kind of like the fog too in lonely Tales of a Lonely Broadcast Station, right? um like, yes, it's a weather whatever, and the station keeps the fog away, but it's like when they know that the fog is rolling in, that's when you have to really be prepared for some shit to go wrong. And it's just a fun little vignette short story that I think it was smart to connect it to the weather, because otherwise all you really have is a description of a monster in this story. Like, we don't get much about our narrator. We don't, there's not any ups and downs. But that's fine because, like, that is what creepypasta is. Sometimes it's just like, I saw this creepy fucked up thing, and this is how, this is what my life is like now because of it. And so that's what's fun about it, right? That's cool. But yeah, I like it. I would not have liked it as much if it didn't connect it to like these unexpected storms or whatever they called it. Like, there was a word that the story used where it was like a pop-up storm or whatever. That's fun, right? My favorite weather related horror story is Sharknado. Um yeah, well, I mean, the the movies are obviously iconic. I don't know if I've ever seen any of the Sharknadoes. I mean, I know what they are, but that's fun. That's all, that's awesome. And yeah, it just elevates it, right? It takes does anyone else too see this? This kind of creeped me out as I was just looking at this more. Like, this to me, this looks like ears, and then eyes right here. And the more I was looking at it, the more I was seeing this as the face of the actual creature. And so I just think it's a really good like use of this picture. I don't know if this picture is associated with the story or just this channel, but I just think I like that. I like when, and maybe I'm the only one who can see it, but that's okay because as the story went on and the more I just looked at this window, the more I was like, And yeah, of course, you could say it's the house in the background. Like, of course it is. But then also, it's like this corner looks kind of off for this roof. Like, maybe it's something else that's in front of it. You know what I mean? But it's just one of those things where, like, I remember they're making a Sharknado prequel. Hell yeah. I think I might have seen like a trailer for that or something. But yeah, that's awesome. Sharknado's fun. It's one of those ideas where it's just like, why the hell not? Like, as ridiculous as it was, they were just like, yeah, and we do use really shitty CGI and we just make these shitty movies for really cheap and they become cult classics. And before you know it, there's 7 of them. And I'm like, respect, dude. More power to you. That's awesome. Like, if you're the guy who's like, yeah, I made the first Sharknado movie. Like, I mean, like, that person probably has a career still in Hollywood to this day, and that's awesome. I love it when, I don't know, I think there's something to be said for people making like the best high effort art that they can, but then I also think there's something to be said for people who just make art and they're like, it doesn't have to be good. We're just going to put it out because we're going to make a movie, you know. We have to make a movie. So yeah, and terrible CGI is so fun. I'm a sucker for it too. Dude, that's funny. Yeah, what, there was something else I wanted to say. Maybe it was about this story. I don't know. Trying to think. But then I got on a Sharknado tangent. Oh well. Um but yeah, cool little short narration, and I think that it shows like a competent creature design. I just it's one of those ones where I'm like, is there more to this story that that the author just hasn't written yet? You know, is that like that could be kind of part of it? Like, do they just have more in the pipe, but they're just like, I'm not ready to write it yet, or it's not their story that they're most excited about, so they're just keeping it, holding it back. But yeah, that's cool, and that's fine. You know, I think if you can get just your monster out there, in one short part, you know, and then you can always add more parts later. I think that's dope too. That's what I kind of tell. That's what, or maybe not what I tell people, but what I would recommend if you feel like you're stuck with a creature or a monster. It's like, well, just write the basics of what you kind of think it is, and like put that out, or you know, at least put that down in like a draft. And then once you have just even a rough outline, then you might start to imagine like, oh well, it might be cool if it was, you know, like ruffling through the garbage or doing that, and then you might start to imagine scenes of what the monster's actually doing. Yeah. But anyway, so that was fun. Maybe we'll come back to another narration. Oh, he's here. Hubbub. I assume this is I assume this is Verdant. But I have no plans to continue this story. It was my first one, and I wanted to keep it tight, like a vignette. Yes, see, exactly what I said, and a very good one for a first one. I didn't want to assume. I didn't know that was the first one, but the fact that was that, then I understand a lot more why you kept it so short. And props to you, because I know so many people, once they put the effort into actually making a creature and make it, they just want to continue that story on for 7 parts. And so I give you a lot of props for just being like, no, it's this, it's a short description, it's a guy who's obsessed with checking the weather because this monster shows up, boom, done. So respect. That's awesome. That's awesome, Verdant. I think now that I know that that was your first thing that you put out, now I'm fully on board with the fact that you just made it a short vignette like description, you know. Um yeah, props to you cuz otherwise when you try to make it this whole narrative where then the narrator is going through like character development and all this stuff, you start to really get bogged down, and all your other ideas that maybe you're incubating and growing, you can't really focus on because you're like, well, I have to finish the first story. You know what I mean? And so I think it's really smart for uh, people who are just starting to write to keep it brief, like keep it, keep it in the micro horror, start to slowly add that length because once you start to get up there in word count, you want it to be on your most interesting, best concepts, right? Like you don't want to do a multi-part on a concept for a monster that in like a month after you wrote it, you're like, I don't really like that monster anymore, But you spent all this time and stuff, and so yeah. I do my best not to wear out my welcome. I'm here for it, man. I don't know if it's just that I've been reading a lot of multi parts lately, and so that's why I wanted to dive into your work specifically and do multiple from you because I was like, he just has multiple different stories and none of them are like multi parts, and so I was like, I'm here for it. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm just getting too jaded on the series is, but I just think it's hard, man. It's hard when you're starting out, and it's hard on like Reddit especially to get people interested in a series that that they have to read 2 parts into it just to get to like the good stuff. I'm like, that's a steep hill to climb for a lot of readers or redditors, and it just makes me feel bad because I'm like, I want to be into your story, I want to read all the parts and get into it, but I feel like so many other people just aren't going to, so then I feel even more like obligated, you know what I mean? I don't know. Anyways, rope you walk gets. I admire people who crank out thousands of word facts. All right. Um, this title is amazing. Our father kept a second family in the pipes. I want to lay some bear traps here before we really get into it. But first of all, what a great title, and then what like an amazing just the idea of like the bigamist, right? The man who has a second family. That already is such a like fun horror concept. Or like the guy who I forget where it was. It was maybe like maybe not Paris, Texas, or maybe it was. Um where he had like one daughter or whatever and a wife, but then all of a sudden they figured out no, he actually had like 10 kids in his basement, and of course these are horrible people. They kept them like locked up, and finally one of the girls ran away, and that's how they got found out. But um so there's already so many ways that you can go with this as a horror concept. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. Rude dude says it's really sad seeing new authors so proud of their 8-part story, knowing not enough people will read all the way through to the end. and exactly my feelings too. And I'm like, you know, I give them kudos. I think that's so awesome. But then at the same time, I'm like, fuck. And also, I'm like, there's no way I can read multi-part stories all the time, you know? Exactly. Yeah, longer stories might be better for traditional publishing rather than Reddit. Yeah. And I think that, you know, like your writing style, can change from if I'm posting a story to the internet to then if I'm putting it in a book or, you know, sending it to a publisher. It's like, you know, I really do think that the best stories still as far as the online ones go, like think about how like 1999 starts or like even Pen Pal starts is like it immediately starts with this scene of him getting like kidnapped and left in the forest, right? Or 1999, he's like, I wanted to watch Pokemon. My dad got me this TV. All of a sudden, I saw this creepy scene of a bear playing hide and go seek with these kids, you know, and that's within like the first few hundred words of the story, you know. It's like it's it very quickly gets there, and that is the type of like, yeah, that is the type of like or brevity that Sia Hubbub uh or I don't know if what I'm so or I'll call you Verdant Sia or Voidling. But yeah, that's the type of brevity that like works for internet stories, you know. That's what makes them a classic. Our father kept a second, but I want to lay some bear traps in terms of I don't know, you know, I don't know if his second family in the pipes is gonna necessarily be human. I kind of almost hope not, because otherwise, like a family living in, like let's say it's just the sewers like underneath the house or something, that is just horrible to think about. But I almost kind of wonder if these are gonna be like creepy, fucked up elf people or like some other, you know, I'm trying to think of like pipe dwelling mystical creatures, you know, kind of like a gremlin or something. I don't know. It's just it's a fun concept. And in the pipes can mean so many things. Like yes, it could be in the actual pipes of the house and it could be like I can hear him whispering, but it also could be you know, he's got a family like or he's got like people in like the septic tank, like the way that people have like gimps and stuff that they keep in their basement. Like there's, I don't know, my mind's going off in so many fucked up little directions that it's very fun. Here, let's get a little music going, and then Professor Creepin, I did see your Discord message. I'm gonna message you back. I was obviously just gonna start my stream. I didn't, you know, I didn't know if you'd be up or whatever, so I was gonna wait to message you back. But yeah, we should chat. Maybe we could even chat today once I'm done streaming. Our father kept a second family in the pipes. We almost never spoke to them. though they always tried to strike conversation. They were amicable, polite, They would ask us questions about our interests or how our day was, at least at first. So it's interesting because the family's not kept a secret, they're not kept a secret from the main family inside the house. So I'm almost wondering, I don't know, are they like demons or something? The father's, he's got a demon bride that lives in the drain and the sink, At least at first, her soft voices would ooze out from the kitchen sink and the shower drain, places like that. Sometimes they would follow us, my sister and I, around the house. They would slither through the pipes like snakes to whisper in our ears. They weren't always there. Dad brought them home sometime after Mom passed. She was on Oh, so maybe they are like talking snakes. Something interesting. Brought them home sometime after Mom passed. She was on her bike ride home from work when she was struck by a drunk driver. Fucker was going 80 miles per hour in a school zone. The police found several empty bottles of barefoot wine in his Volkswagen Bug. I was 15 at the time. My sister was 17. Mom was amazing. Dad didn't adapt well to life without her. None of us did. But he was completely despondent for every bit of 2 years. All day, every day. He would sit expressionless. If it weren't for sleeping and drinking, I doubt he'd have done anything at all. It pissed me off that my father would turn to the same vice that caused the accident. I never told him that. One day, Dad danced through the front door like nothing had ever happened. He wouldn't tell us why he was so happy, not at first, which was frankly a little frightening. We worried that he'd found something new to live for, something that we might not fit into. We were relieved to learn that he would not be abandoning us. He said he'd invited some special guests over to stay for a while. We probably should have been more concerned, especially when these guests never seemed to arrive. But we were just scared kids. We just wanted him back. They were 15 and 17. I mean, I guess they are, technically kids, but I feel like I would have a lot more questions as a 15 or 17-year-old. But I can understand, like, in the context of the story, that it's just being like, oh, we were just happy he finally wasn't, a zombie anymore. And so I can understand that, but like to not even ask, like, hey Dad, when are those guests coming that you told us about? Like, I don't know, to me, just as a reader, I'm just being like, fuck that. I'd be like, hey Dad, so are you seeing people? Are they ghosts? Like, what? What are you talking about? We probably should have been more concerned, especially when these guests never seemed to arrive. But we were just scared kids. We just wanted him back. Dad had been his usual happy self for another 2 years before Olivia came tearing out of the bathroom, screaming about hearing voices. She ran into the kitchen and breathlessly told us that she had been brushing her teeth when she heard a group of people speaking to her from the sink. Dad's smile faltered at that. He assured us that it was nothing, that Olivia had just imagined it. He took her temperature and the thermometer read 101.3. He didn't realize that we had heard the hairdryer running the whole time that we had been searching for the thermometer. As he sent us off to bed, he plastered on what he must have thought was a reassuring grin, but it was too late. I had seen the look in his eyes when his face fell, the look that said, "Oh shit." So is this part implying that he was like using the hairdryer to like heat the thermometer? Like he was using it to make it to try to gaslight her into thinking like, "Oh, you're just having a fever, you're just hallucinating." I assume that's kind of what that part means. Oh. Whoops. Well, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to start. It started to play different shit, but I guess if it's good. Okay. Fair enough. I guess I'll loop this one for a while. He saw the look of his dad being like, "Oh shit." I sat in the bathroom for a while that night, doing my best to be absolutely silent. I thought that they wouldn't talk if they knew I was there. But I had it all ass backwards. It wasn't until I knocked a bottle of soap onto the floor that they spoke. Oh, hello. You must be Matthew. It's lovely to meet you. Whatever the next words were, I couldn't hear them over the sound of my own screaming. I ran as fast as I could to the bedroom and hid under the covers all night. We asked our father about them the next morning. We wouldn't talk about it until I told him my experience to affirm Olivia's story. He said those voices in the pipes belonged to his other wife and his other children. He said it in the same way that somebody says the grass is greener, as if we should intrinsically understand. As if we should intrinsically understand the bizarre bullshit he was spewing. Beyond that, he would only tell us that they are important to him and that he loves them every bit as much as he loves us. We heard him screaming in the bathroom that night. I tried to ask him what was wrong, but he just yelled at me to go to bed. I cried myself to sleep. I think we both did, but I couldn't bring myself to ask Olivia, my sister, about it. Things changed after Olivia and I became aware of our father's other family. Dad started to seem less happy with his other family, and more just plain obsessed with them. We were losing him, again. Watching him slip away from us made a certain amount of sense the first time. We lost our mom, and he lost his wife. That crushing despair and sudden loneliness could defeat anybody. I never blamed him for it the first time, but the second, I still don't think I've forgiven him for what those days were like. He would lock himself in the bathroom for hours and spend time with his second family. Our dinner started to shrink while the amount of pureed? Yeah, while the amount of pureed meat he poured down the drain grew. It didn't take us long to recognize that we were no longer the priority, and it didn't take long after that for resentment to sprout within our hearts. They started to mess with us more often. One day, they called me a litany of slurs and told me to jump off a bridge. The next, they read out every word of Olivia's diary. At least, that's what I assumed, based on how long it took for them to stop. I didn't want to help them intrude on her private life, so I went outside. I stopped showering after my father's other wife made a pass at me from the shower drain. Small things started to go missing from the bathroom, the kitchen area, toothbrushes, lotion, chess pie, and several apples. I could go on. We tried to comfort Dad once. Olivia and I screamed at the bathroom door as we pounded with both fists. He gently opened the door and spoke to us in a whisper. "You guys need to get out of here." And then louder. "You are interrupting family story time, and it is frankly very rude." Okay, so now it seems like maybe the dad is stuck. Like, at first he wanted them there, but now he's like, I know they're gonna hurt my human kids if I don't do what they want, so I have to kind of like, he's kind of a hostage to them, a little bit. But I mean, couldn't you just move? Like, if they're in the pipes, whatever they are. I mean, unless they're like, a demon or a ghost, something that just can move through walls that's gonna follow you. But it seems like if they're confined to the drains, like, I don't know, but then I guess maybe if you moved houses, they could just crawl through the pipes and come into the house. But interesting. So that's what we did. We left the house for a little while, sleeping in the car and feeding ourselves with the gas we had swiped from Dad's restaurant. We came back after a couple of days. I'm not sure if we were just going back to get more cash or if we were willing to try again with Dad. We never got the opportunity for the latter. The house appeared to have been ransacked. Every edible morsel had disappeared, presumably down the drain. We found our father slumped over the bathroom sink with a knife in his hand. His skin was gray and his eyes looked glassy, like a doll's eyes. Chunks of flesh had been hacked out of him. A bloody scrap of his thigh, still clutched to his fingertips, lay dangling over the drain. As Olivia and I stood in horror, we watched a long, slender appendage, like a butterfly's proboscis, rise from the drain and yank the ragged piece of flesh out of our father's cold, dead hand. It didn't hurt as much as it should have, which hurts in its own way. I like that. That's a good line. Didn't hurt as much as it should have, which hurts in its own way. I think I must have gotten used to the idea of losing him, or maybe I just hated him enough that in that moment to pretend I had. I numbly dialed 911, and after explaining the situation, I looked one last glance at my father's corpse. I wanted to cry, but the tears never came. I tried to tell the cops what had happened when they came to collect I was devastated when I heard that news. The only thing I wanted to do was put as much distance between me and what used to be my home as possible. Olivia barely contained sobbing. Olivia's barely contained sobbing told me that she felt the same way. The state was not comfortable with leaving 2 minors unattended, so my Aunt Gertrude came down to stay with us. To her credit, she really tried. She tried really hard to understand. There was no real way for us to explain to her why we weren't brushing our teeth or bathing as much as we should have been. My father's other family didn't seem to want Gertrude to know about them. The few times we tried to show our aunt the second family her brother had adopted, they were silent. In hindsight, it's obvious what they were doing. They wanted us to feel isolated so that we would talk to them. Then they could manipulate us the same way they had done to Dad. They spoke in his voice sometimes, the rich timbre gently vibrating the pipes on its way to do the same to our eardrums. He said he was happy. He said we could join him and his second family in the pipes. I've always told myself that there was nothing of my father in the thing of using his voice, but to tell you the truth, I'm not sure I cared if there was. We weren't going to take it anywhere. Did you get it? Olivia asked after school one day. I had been playing hooky and buying supplies. 5 bottles of Drano, styrofoam, and gasoline, just like you said. I felt proud of myself for getting exactly what she requested. What's it for? Ain't her reluctant reply. In the neat way she said it told me that she knew it was absurd. Okay, here, we're gonna stop doing the music, okay. Here, well, if we go back to hours and then I loop hours, it should be okay. Maybe we'll go to Witch Bolt in a bit if we want to keep it. But yeah, I thought that music was kind of too busy too. I think it was fun for a little bit, but it was getting old. But that's the thing, I can never really hear it. And even if I have it turned way down on my computer, it's way louder on the stream. So I wonder if they're gonna try to like light the drains up on fire, or if yeah, I don't know. I think just plugging all of the drains but one, and then dumping all the Drano down like the main one. I mean, it's got to at least hurt whatever these creatures are, right? You'd assume. I argued how insane her plan was the whole way home. In the end, she relented, and we agreed it would be an absolute last case measure. Five bottles of Drano later, and our father's other family had only reacted with groans of mild discomfort, like how you might sound if you got splashed with water on a cold day. I was desperately trying to brainstorm other ideas when they stopped groaning and spoke again. "You're wasting your time. It's better down here." It was our mother's voice. I'm not going going to lie to you. We kind of lost our shit after that, not with fear, but with anger at the audacity of this thing. Here's the thing, it can copy all their voices, but the fact they should just, I guess maybe the ant would stop them, you know, if they did it. But I'm like, wouldn't the ant be, if the ant is living in the house with them, wouldn't she be, like, couldn't they dump all the Drano down and then, like, the ant would hear them, like, groaning and shit and be like, oh, damn, maybe there's something to this. I don't know. It had taken our father, and now it was soiling the memory of our mother. We screamed ourselves hoarse and brought bedlam down upon the bathroom. We broke pretty much everything. We threw anything that wasn't nailed down at the sink in a blind rage. After that, I collapsed against the wall, crying in a way that I hadn't since Mom had her accident. Olivia stood, shoulders shaking in the doorway and looking as if she were waiting for permission. Olivia, I said, get the styrofoam. 20 minutes later, we had the napalm ready to go. One big bucket of fuck you for our response to our father's other family. As we carefully poured the gelatinous material into various strains, it muffled their voices, and our home fell truly silent for the first time in what felt like forever. We sat together and enjoyed that for a few minutes. Then we pulled the flare we had found in an old survivalist kit from the garage, lit it, and threw it into the small puddle of makeshift napalm left in the basin of the sink. We figured it might take some time to burn its way down into the pipes, but we underestimated how hot it would be in the meantime. Roughly 5 minutes past ignition, Aunt Gertrude, home early from work, burst in demanding to know what that horrible smell was. She had just enough time to process the wrecked, partially burning bathroom before she found out exactly what the horrible smell was. The pipes under the sink melted away, and a gout of steam flung flaming napalm across the room, directly into the face of our aunt. Oh shit. So wait, is it a steam creature? And a gout of steam flung flaming napalm. Everything she tried to do just made it worse. Wiping her face with her hands just set her hands on fire. Wiping her hands on a towel just set the towel on fire, which set the house on fire. Olivia and I fled the bathroom as our aunt became a careening ball of flame, screaming her way from wall to wall. We could see from the hallway that the napalm in the deeper sections of the pipe had not yet lit. As much as I wanted to make sure that the job got done, we had to leave. The whole house was going to burn down soon. We tried to exit through the kitchen, but when we rounded the corner, we saw hundreds of their wet appendages rising out of the drain. Thrashing wildly in search for us, they spanned the whole room, stretching and reacting, flinging furniture around and yanking whatever they could get hold of down the pipes. The situation in each of their bedrooms was yeah, I don't know. Here, pause real quick. It said the thing about like the moth, pupus, or whatever that word was. And so I'm thinking like it's an insect, but it like has tentacles too, or appendages, wet appendages. So I don't know. Might just be like a fatberg drain monster, you know? They spanned the whole room, stretching and retracting, flinging furniture around and yanking whatever they could to get hold of down into the pipes. The situation in each of our bedrooms was exactly the same as in the kitchen. I'm not sure if they had been following us again, or if there were just many of them. The bathroom, or if there were just that many of them. The bathroom in Olivia's bedroom was significantly closer to the door than my own. So when we opened her bedroom door, we found ourselves within their reach. The fire behind us had spread significantly, cutting us off from any chance of escape. The door began to shake as our father's other family tried to work their tubular appendages around the doorknob. The door opened slowly, and we could only watch as the slender limbs approached us. They lashed out with all the skill and speed of a snapping turtle, missing their mark by millimeters. It wasn't until this moment that we got a good look at the proboscises. They were tongues, black as soot and stretched beyond recognition. I thought it was over for us until our pursuers were intercepted by something that had come flailing down the flaming hallway. It was Aunt Gertrude, still fully aflame and still fully panicking. Their black tongues yanked in unison, pulling Aunt Gertrude across the room and down the drain with a sickening series of cracks and pops and squelches, all taking place in the same half second. Her body contorted wildly as she was pulled down the drain, bone by bone. Moments after they had taken her down, their screams began. Aunt Gertrude's still flaming corpse had ignited the napalm that had melted down into the pipes. They must have screamed with every voice they'd ever heard, including mine and Olivia's. There was no time to mourn our aunt or to relish in the agony of the beast. Now that the rest of the napalm had ignited, the fire in the house was growing exponentially. We ran through Olivia's now empty bedroom and jumped out of the window. The house burned to the ground. We didn't stick around to make absolutely sure they were dead, but we saw the thin shadows of their flaming appendages dancing on the burning curtains. That was enough for us to feel satisfied. In washing our hands of it all, Olivia and I got in our father's 1993 Ford Bronco and we left. We abandoned our old lives and identities entirely. We were already murder suspects. We were not about to beat arson charges, not to mention the accidental murder of Aunt Gertrude, so we drove away without any idea of where we were headed. Anywhere had to be better than what used to be home. That's just a fun story, you know. It didn't get too actiony at the end. It got, in my opinion, like surrealist, like the way that it pulled Aunt Gertrude down, like bone by bone through the pipes. Like, yeah, is that maybe not fully possible? Yes, but you know, I mean, these monsters were so surrealist anyways, and you know, I kind of liked the whole they're trying to isolate you and like manipulate you. Yeah, I think probably I think the best part about the story is like the kind of beginning and the wondering, like, what could this family be in the pipes. I think a tentacle tongue monster is fun, and that's kind of all that it needed to be. But I also would have liked if it was like creepy little tiny elves or something, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot you could have done with like the small drain world, and think about like what grows in a drain pipe, over the years. It's like so much bacteria or whatever. And then also the fact that the dad brought them home one day, or like maybe had discovered them in the pipes. I don't exactly know, but it kind of made me wonder, like what did they initially do to the dad, or promise the dad to be like, we'll be your new family, you know what I mean? Like, unless they had just always existed in there, and then he just like, once they started talking to him, he came to accept them. Yeah, it's yeah, oh yeah, glad you liked the Bronco. Yeah, I liked the Bronco, and I liked that Aunt Gertrude gets whatever napalm, and that she kind of becomes the incendiary that like finally burns the creatures. I think that's a really fun visual. I also think like maybe adding a line about how when she gets dragged down the drain bone by bone, about like how because she's burning with this napalm, like maybe parts of her skin like squeeze off like a tube of toothpaste, or that's not exactly right, but like the way, I don't know, like the way a machine will like pull off when someone's cutting off the like plastic outside of like a wire, and they're getting that outer part out to expose the wire underneath, like because that's what I pictured when it went down the drain. Like I pictured that anyways, but yeah, I just think that like that scene of her getting sucked down the drain really is, for me, kind of the climax. Like, sure, them watching that monsters burn and stuff is obviously like where it's going, but that image of the ant getting snatched up and yanked down the drain like one by one. So I think the idea of like some of her, like maybe even her like clothes, or some of like her whatever skin and like eyeballs or something getting like left in the sink, like I don't know, just something kind of about that might be kind of fun. But yeah, it's a super degloving. Oh, degloving. Yeah, degloving. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a super cool like climactic scene, and yeah, it's just I think it's I don't know, like I like that the napalm works. Sure, it's a little bit like I was a little bit like, is napalm really that easy to make? But maybe it is, and also I think that like the way these tentacles like kind of come up and grab stuff, I don't know, it kind of is fitting, right, that there's like this fire sludge that, like, how napalm like sticks to everything, and so it's like the same way that these tentacles are like grabbing everything and stealing stuff from like inside the house. I kind of like that, like they create this ultimate like sludge to just dump down the drains and then light it on fire. It would work. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know how easy it is to make homemade napalm. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure the anarchist handbook or whatever, I'm sure people can do it. But yeah, I like the idea of like these creatures that live in the sludge in the drain get completely like that they use this kind of sludge to ultimately like be their undoing. I just think that that's kind of a fun, like comeuppance for them. And then yeah, I was maybe kind of curious as to like, well, how are they, able to just like copy everyone's voice, because the family wasn't even around when the mom was around. So I was like, how would they know the mom's voice? But I think that's maybe just one of those things that it's like, well, the narrator's not telling us, but that probably means the family was there beforehand, and it's just like the father finally accepted them or kind of realized them, and the family, this creature, only started to manipulate the father once the wife was gone, because then he was in a position to be manipulated, So I'm kind of thinking that this monster was just always kind of there, lurking in the drain, in the shadows, so to speak. But it's a cool, fun visual story, and yeah, I think it's this idea of like all of a sudden, somebody who's completely like zombified and just completely whatever, beside themselves with grief, all of a sudden snapping out of that. And because the kids are so desperate to have a father that's present, right, they're willing to kind of accept it for a little while, and then that just slowly makes everything so much worse. But yeah, it's a unique concept. It's fun. It's a great title. I did kind of want to read some of the comments. Oh, here, got my upvote. Yeah, rip Aunt Gertrude for sure. Yeah, unique premise for sure. Oh, the 80-mile-an-hour bike ride is a reference. Yeah, there was a few references to keep Creepcast episodes, and obviously the Bronco is a reference to fucking OJ and stuff like that. Yeah. I like the few Creepcast references that I've seen in your stories. I think that's fun. I say, especially if you're gonna post them like on Creepcast, like, people should do that. I think it's fun for readers. Any way you can hide like Easter eggs and stuff in stories, it ultimately, for the people that do recognize it, it just makes the story that much a little more fun and personal. That's great. Yeah, I liked it. That's a good one. I'd say I probably like it maybe a little bit more than the succubus, but I do think the succubus story was a little funnier. I was hoping that maybe this story would have these like funny kind of comedic beats where the dad's like, don't worry about it. My other family is just, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're my favorite, sort of a thing. Like, where he starts kind of doing all this. I was kind of waiting for the dad to, like, kind of say more, like, fucked up stuff that, like, a manipulative, gaslighting father would say. And there was, like, a little bit of that, but I think that because the story had a more serious tone, that it made sense that there wasn't like all this ridiculous dialogue with the father. But with what the title was, I was like, oh, this might get really funny. But then it actually went in kind of a cool, unique direction. So I liked it. I just, yeah, Succubus one was certainly funnier. But both were cool and both had their moments, you know. But now we're going to read The Shadow over Bikini Bottom, which this is kind of my first foray into the cartoon-esque creepypasta stuff. I'm excited. I think it'll be fun. I'm expecting like hyper realistic blood. I'm expecting, to get a Squidward sewer slide kind of moment. In some ways, but then also, with the way that Voidling's writing has been thus far, it's like it might end up just being a creepy, good horror story set in SpongeBob's world, So it could be that too. It could kind of go either way, right? But I'm certainly hoping for funny as well as shocking and horrifying. I'm expecting a bit of both here, and like over the top hyper violence. Bikini Bottom. Down deep within the crystal blue of the ocean, her beauty so magnifique. I hope I do too. Thank you, Voidling. SpongeBob is jellyfishing with his best friend Patrick Star. The gentle grasses of jellyfish fields echo with their gleeful laughter. But oh, the quest quest. What is this? A shadow approaches the home of our humble heroes, crackling with dark intent. La 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 la. SpongeBob paused mid-leap, bringing the game of leapfrog to an end as he landed on Patrick with a thud. Yeah, the Bikini Bottom author. Yep. As he landed on Patrick with a thud. Patrick? What in the world is that? Oh, I must have forgotten to put on deodorant again, Patrick replied, dusting himself off from the fall. Yeah, this one had a narration too. I thought about listening to it. Should we listen to it or should I read it, rude dude? I was ready to read it, but if there is a narration of it, maybe it would just be more fun to listen to a true narrator. Cause yeah, I don't know. Okay, build me an author. This one has narrations. Oh, well, I don't have a link to the narration, so I'm gonna keep reading. No, Patrick, not your body odor. That. He gestured toward the swirling mass of inky black which lingered at the perimeter of the jellyfish field, thick, heavy, and darker than the night itself. It oozed down. Oh, yeah, on the Discord. Okay, I see. It oozed down to the ocean floor, coating the sand below in a viscous, choking sludge. At the edges of the turbulent cloud, the ooze bled rainbow hues into the water around it. Oh, pretty. Patrick was entranced by the colors, which danced out from within the shadows before them. So it's an oil spill. Am I getting that right? It's an oil spill on Bikini Bottom. Which danced out from within the shadows and before them. He walked mindlessly towards the burgeoning abyss, reaching out to scoop the rainbow in his own two hands. Patrick, no! SpongeBob leapt forward and tackled Patrick, preventing him from putting his hands into the ooze.
What? Huh? What happened?
Patrick asked. You were trying to touch the mysterious glob of inky sludge, SpongeBob replied in exasperation.
Oh, right,
Patrick said before continuing.
Say, it's getting kinda late, SpongeBob. I need to get home or I'll miss the weather forecast for later tonight.
Why do you need to watch the weather for later tonight? SpongeBob asked.
So that I can know how to dress for when I'm asleep,
Patrick said in a sage tone, and they began their walk home together. As they moved through the gathering darkness of a Bikini Bottom night, neither one were aware of the microscopic filament which bound poor Patrick to the shadow. It pulsed with malice, growing thicker with every step. They bid each other farewell and good night several times, much to the chagrin of Squidward. Well, you two nincompoops, please keep it down. You're disrupting my beauty sleep, he whined from the window. Sorry, Squidward, SpongeBob said.
Yeah, sorry, Squidward,
said Patrick. I said keep it down, he said as he slammed shut the window. Oop, sorry, Squidward. Good night, Squidward, SpongeBob answered.
Good night, Squidward, Patrick whispered.
And Squidward quietly raged himself to sleep.
Bionk.
The sound of SpongeBob There we go. The sound of SpongeBob's foghorn alarm clock flung his blanket across the room, leaving him exposed to the still morning air. He shivered, moving too close the moving to close the window in his bedroom when he heard something. It was a voice he knew well, but something had changed. The typically happy-go-lucky voice of Patrick now crept over SpongeBob's windowsill with despair and strain laced throughout. SpongeBob! 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 He sounded like he had been repeating the name for so long that it had lost its meaning. The desperation and panic had bled out of the cry for help before it was heard. Patrick, what's sweet Neptune? SpongeBob looked out the window to see Patrick protruding from SpongeBob looked out the window to see Patrick protruding from the hole, which was his home, leaving his rock roof turned over on its hinges. He had swollen to 7 times his usual size, with his pink skin taking in ever shifting shades of black as the oily sludge swirled beneath. "Don't worry, Patrick. I'll call the doctor. He'll fix this." The excitement had drawn the attention of Squidward, who, after a brief moment of horror at Patrick's appearance, decided this was not his problem and closed the window once more. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, and the doctor was quick to share the news with SpongeBob. "I'm afraid there's nothing we can do," Doctor cooed in his usual disaffected tone. "But doctor, there must be something," SpongeBob cried, rivers of tears which rapidly flooded the living room of his pineapple home, prompting the doctor to open a window and drain the salty fluid. "I'm moved by your emotional outburst, SpongeBob. Truly, I am. But I don't think it's that kind of story anymore." "What does that mean?" SpongeBob asked, drawing a blank look for a response. The doctor sped off, leaving his words echoing in the mind of the young sponge almost as loudly as the wretched groaning of his tormented best friend. He lay in bed, desperately willing the positive thoughts to drown out the crushing reality. "Patrick will probably be fine. Crazy stuff like this happens all the time. Don't think it's that kind of story anymore. We've been through way worse than this, and everybody is always right as rain at the end. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. Well, at least I'll always have you, Gary. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore." SpongeBob awoke, determined to help his friend. He set out early to Jellyfish Fields in search of the shadow, hoping to find some hint towards an answer. But he found only a thin trail which lingered on the ocean floor, leading him directly back to Patrick. He shuffled off to work at the Krusty Krab, with despair coiled like a serpent around his breaking heart. The patties smelled the same, the buns had the same number of sesame seeds, 11, and the customers had the same zeal for consumption in their hearts. SpongeBob, for his part, was in a daze. He could not understand how daily life could continue while one he loved so much lingered in agony. "Order up, Squidward," he said flatly. Squidward turned sharply towards the sponge, but softened upon remembering the situation. "Thanks, SpongeBob." "Thanks, SpongeBob." He placed a cupped hand on his shoulder. "Hey, it's going to be all right. It always turns out all right, and then I don't think it's that kind of story anymore." A young fish had been talking with his friend. SpongeBob, overhearing them, had leapt out to question the young fish. "What do you mean? Why would you say that? Do you think Patrick isn't going to be okay?" The question sprung out from under the tension SpongeBob had been feeling, leaving his mouth faster than he could process what he was saying. "We were talking about kelp wars, you weirdo. Get off of me." The child shoved SpongeBob across the room, where he looked up from the floor into the sympathetic, tired eyes of Mr. Krabs. "I think you need to go home, lad. Get some rest." Home was the place he wanted to be. SpongeBob sat at his window, as he had every night since the affliction struck. chatting with Patrick. The lungs of the starfish strained against the oily mass which pressed against them, making it painful and difficult for him to speak. He lay near catatonic as swells rose and rippled through his big fat belly, now bigger and fatter than ever before. By necessity, SpongeBob took the lead on most of the conversation. SpongeBob, Patrick wheezed out, interrupting SpongeBob's rant about the latest episode of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. What is it, Pat? SpongeBob hadn't heard Patrick sound so alert in days.
What are we gonna do when I get better?
He asked. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. SpongeBob tried his best not to hesitate, but the words of the doctor echoed loudly through his burdened mind, acting as a buffer against the words of comfort he wished to say. He told Patrick tales of jellyfishing and bubble blowing, but his best friend could read him like a picture book. Patrick had clocked the hesitation.
Sponge, my dad's old revolver.
He sucked water into his lungs with long, high-pitched whine.
It's in the hidden compartment of my secret box. I want you to have it.
He groaned as a black mass within him stretched against his skin. He used to tell me that the only things a star has in this life are his word and his. Another spasm of the shadow sent waves of agony rolling through him. His will. My body writhes despite how I plead with it.
His will. My body writhes despite how I plead with it to stop. I have been robbed of my will, left only with my word. SpongeBob, will you kill me, please? It hurts so much. Pretty, please.
I love that. I was thinking, I was like, I know that SpongeBob's like dumb too, but Patrick is totally the Lenny of the situation, right? Like SpongeBob has a job, he works at the Krusty Krab, he's the George, and then Patrick is the Lenny, and the fact that now we get a SpongeBob having to, kill Patrick, to put him out of his misery. I mean, that's awesome. That's not quite exactly what happened in Of Mice and Men, but I'm seeing the connection here. And yes, I'm absolutely with my chest fucking 10 toes down relating a SpongeBob creepypasta to Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And I'm seeing a lot of like I say, there's a lot of similarities between Lenny and Patrick, as well as SpongeBob and George. SpongeBob is like the stable one. SpongeBob is the one who can kind of get them out of trouble, right? When him or Patrick get into trouble. And in Of Mice and Men, right, Lenny is like, he's useful because he's so strong, but that is also his downfall, right? That is also what leads him to ultimately first kill his little puppy dog and then get tricked into getting caught up with the seductress who was honestly, I forget quite the beats of that story, but I can't remember if she was actually gonna sleep with Lenny or if she was trying to make her husband jealous, who like wasn't paying her enough attention. But I remember that she's like hitting on him and she's letting him touch her hair, right? and then Lenny gets all excited, but then she starts to like freak out and maybe not overreact, but Lenny wasn't gonna. That's the thing, is Lenny is innocent in that story, and it's the same is true of Patrick. Uh, Patrick's ultimately innocent, and uh, Lenny was tricked into like being alone with her, and was touching her hair at her request, and then it's only when Lenny like starts to really whatever get into it, or really that she then starts to freak out. And Lenny wasn't going to assault her, right? That's not a part of the story. It's very clear that Lenny has the mind of a child. He doesn't think about things like that, right? The same way, Patrick and SpongeBob don't really, think of girls or stuff like that. But Lenny only kills her because she starts to freak out, and Lenny knows that she'll get him in trouble, and so he just tries to quiet her, and then he accidentally ends up strangling her, right? Because he's so strong. Um, and so I'm seeing sort of obviously not a similar thing in this, other than Patrick went and touched the goo, right? But now SpongeBob has to do what George would do, and he has to, tell Lenny about them rabbits, George. And the same way that Patrick's like, tell me what we're gonna do. I totally think we're gonna get a scene where he's like, we're gonna catch so many jellyfish, bud. Jellyfish as far as the eye can see. And Patrick's like, I can see it, George. I can see it, and Patrick's gonna be like, I can see it, SpongeBob, and then it's gonna be like, we're totally gonna get one of these awesome, uh, you know, whatever, putting Patrick out of his misery sort of a thing. I love it.
Pretty please.
What, Patrick? No, you're talking crazy. We're going to get through. Don't think it's that kind of story anymore. SpongeBob screamed into the night and slammed the window closed, abandoning his friend to linger in darkness. Ugh. SpongeBob bolted awake, unable to figure out what had sounded different about his alarm. That's tragic, equal equal iconic moments in fiction. Yes, absolutely. Oh, SpongeBob bolted awake, unable to figure out what had sounded different about his alarm, until the haggard voice of Patrick split the early morning waters of Bikini Bottom once more. He bolted to the window, staring out in the horror as Patrick's form was brutally distorted along each axis. His body bled the same rainbows of hues they'd seen in Jellyfish Field. Ichor of the color of stainless night oozed from every pore as the poor starfish stretched and contorted wildly, the shadow within fighting to escape him. Just hang on, Patrick, I'm coming, SpongeBob yelled. The doctors had warned him that whatever had infected Patrick might be transmissible, but the young sponge no longer cared for his own safety. By the time he had reached his front door, a convoy of trucks from the Bikini Bottom Department of Health had rolled up. Piscine heroes, his I don't know what that is, but his skiing heroes in hazmat suits quickly moved on a distorted starfish with smoky black steam pouring from within. SpongeBob fought desperately to be at his friend's side, catching a billy club to the face as the perimeter. I think this is a typo here. I think you just need perimeter. I think it just needs to be that, and it's perimetered, as the perimeter was brutally enforced. Patrick screamed for 30 minutes more and then grew still, leaving only a blackened, shriveled, distorted husk of himself. The shadow hung in the waters over Conch Street for days. SpongeBob was trapped inside his pineapple home as cleanup efforts were ongoing. In the dark of his bedroom, he cried late into the night. Yonk. Even the alarm clock sounded pitiful. SpongeBob weakly batted at the clock, knocking a framed picture of Patrick into the waist-high ocean of his tears. He moved with panic in his blood, snatching up the photograph before it could be ruined by the salty water. Nearby, Gary floated through the room on SpongeBob's favorite recliner. Meow. Gary asked the question despite knowing SpongeBob had no answer. I have no idea. Hopefully soon, he replied to his beloved pet. The cleanup efforts have kept them indoors for 2 days. With no apparent progress made, the end was nowhere in sight. SpongeBob resigned himself to watching the crew in their hazmat suits. Today they were making an attempt to clear the ooze with an explosive charge.
3, 2, 1.
The countdown crackled out from the megaphone before a shockwave tore through Conch Street. The houses jumped 10 feet into the air before settling back in their place. Squidward's house had shifted in displeasure, with its features forming a disapproving scowl. Meow. Gary interjected. "Oh, right. Sorry, Gare," SpongeBob mumbled, moving to prepare the bowl of slimy canned snail food for his friend. The blast had been effective, only causing the puddles of shadow to leap briefly. Blast had been ineffective, only causing the puddles of shadow to leap briefly into the air before returning their shape and sending a shard of Patrick's rock home rocketing through the air. It collided with and tore a small hole through the suit of a cleanup crew member. SpongeBob glanced out the window as he set down the bowl of snail food. The shadow was gone along with the cleanup crew. Hey, I guess it works. SpongeBob had forgotten his grief for the smallest of moments. He wished desperately to forget again. He was grateful for the opportunity to distract himself. The hustle and bustle of the Krusty Krab might allow him to lose part of himself to routine. The camaraderie between chef and diner steeling the young Sponge's heart against the howling winds of despair. Entering the establishment, which had been like a second home to him, SpongeBob felt himself hollowed out by each pair of fearful eyes he saw on the faces of customers. He moved to the grill, hoping to busy himself with orders which never came. After the first 3 hours of waiting, he went to ask Mr. Krabs what was going on. Haven't you seen the news, lad? Mr. Krabs had been crying. It's the end of the world. Don't be expecting your paycheck. He started blubbering again. What are you talking about? SpongeBob felt too broken to console his boss. No matter how much he wanted to, the grief still weighing too heavily on his soul. See for yourself, lad. He turned on the television, switching over to the local news. We interrupt this program for a very important news announcement. A fish bloated with black ooze has waddled into Bikini Bottom City Center. Residents report a foul odor similar to the one left behind by the remains of a local starfish who met a terrible fate. Will this be the end of the world? SpongeBob shattered. He swept himself into a dustpan before recombining the shards. The same horror which had struck through his heart was rearing back to strike again. He fled the Krusty Krab, leaving behind the cloud of bubbles as he went, on his way to visit the only person who might be able to help. Going to Sandy. The tree dome stood darker than usual, or perhaps it was the very perception of the young sponge which had darkened. Sandy answered the door with a grim expression, leading SpongeBob to the picnic table where she filled his bowl with a thick, amber colored interpretation of iced tea. "What can I do for you, SpongeBob?" Sandy sounded like she hadn't slept in days. The squirrel genius was twitchy and irritable. "Well, I think since those cleanup guys were having such a hard time, maybe you could help them." SpongeBob spoke the words, already aware of their futility. "I think they might be running out of ideas." Sandy was silent for a moment. She stared at her friend as he cracked a bad joke. "SpongeBob, who do you think's advising those yahoos? I've been the one telling them folks what might be worth trying the whole time. Now, one of them clean-up fellers is lying in the middle of Bikini Bottom just waiting to die." She spoke the whole sentence with a sigh before continuing. "Look, SpongeBob, I want to fix this nice and clean as much as anybody, but I'm not sure it's that kind of story anymore. You want my advice? Get out of here while the getting's still good." The door of the tree dome airlock slammed shut behind him. The wheel which served as both lock and handle hesitated, as if Sandy might have something more to say, before clicking into place with finality. SpongeBob walked home in a daze, going to his bedroom and going to sleep. Another day's sunlight forced its way behind his eyelids, tearing him from the gentle oblivion of sleep. He shuffled aimlessly down the stairs, mindlessly flickering through channels until he landed on the news. There was to be an emergency meeting on what could be done to save the town. As the shadow had emerged and taken a new host overnight, SpongeBob felt that he, as one of the closest witnesses, had obligation to attend. "Burn it! Bomb it! What if we took the shadow and pushed it somewhere else?" SpongeBob felt as if he was hearing the voice of a ghost at the last suggestion. Hours of deliberation followed, with Mr. Krabs as the most staunch proponent of what had been dubbed Operation Red Herring. The proposed operation was very simple. A sacrifice recently invaded by the shadow would be driven far enough from the city for the evil to be swept away in the tide. The arguments continued late into the night, with multiple bouts of violence instigated by Mr. Krabs against those who opposed Operation Red Herring. By morning, the time had come to select a sacrifice. The people of Bikini Bottom decided they would put it to a vote. When the result was announced, Mr. Crab came to regret the brutal violence which he had introduced to the discussion. The opposition had pooled their votes together, selecting Crab's own daughter, Pearl, as their sacrifice. Oh my god, this is fucking awesome. I love how it was like, I mean, it's a depressing, the whole shadow over Bikini Bottom. It's a depressing story throughout, but it's like it's going from, it's like a hazmat infection story. It's like a suicide pact story. now it's like a ritual sacrifice story. It's just kind of hitting all the marks so beautifully of like lots of creepypastas that, and it's doing them in such a like actually fun way for the SpongeBob world that it's, I mean, it's honestly genius. Like it's a very good classic creepypasta, but like if you're a fan of SpongeBob, you would be a fan of this, but then also it's like I almost wonder if this could just be a SpongeBob episode. Like sure, it's a kid show, so it would have to be like at the end I think Patrick would have to come back, or they'd have to cure the people in some way, which I don't think that's how this story's going to end. But like this legitimately seems like, other than like that there would maybe need to be a few more jokes, and like the fact that like maybe not have the visit with Sandy be so depressing, like I honestly think this would make a good SpongeBob episode. Which I have not watched SpongeBob in a very long time, so it's like I don't know really what the show is like now. I remember watching it as a kid. Um obviously, but yeah, I feel like in my bones, like this could be the good kind of beginning of a script for an episode. And whatever the writers, or even the Verdant, the writer, could like, they could just punch it up a little bit more, make a few more jokes here and there. And yeah, clearly it's kind of long to maybe be in an episode thus far, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and it's making me want to watch some of the old SpongeBob episodes. Like it's making me be like, that was really like the best show when I was like the right age for it. I mean, SpongeBob was and still was the shit, and I still to this day love like the SpongeBob movie, the first one with like David Hasselhoff, and where it's like, I'm a goofy goob, I rock. Like I remember that ending to a movie being so satisfying as like a whatever I was, maybe 11-year-old kid at the time when that came out. I feel like I was kind of getting to a point where I was growing out of SpongeBob, but then the movie ended up being like so funny and so awesome that it kind of like it made SpongeBob cool again for like the audience that was kind of aging out of it, was like sucked back into it. You know what I mean? At least for the movie. And yeah, it's just really making me be like, I should watch the SpongeBob movie again. I should watch one of the newer movies and see like how they've been and shit like that. Yeah, great show. SpongeBob kicks ass, honestly. And this story kicks ass too. For the next 2 days, they treated her like a queen. They lavished her with exotic gifts and exquisite meals, things so extravagant that they drove the despair from Mr. Krabs' eyes for but a moment as they transformed briefly into dollar signs. Pearl went on shopping sprees, drove fabulous boats, and he even had a private show with Boys Who Cry. That's like the punk band or something, I think, from SpongeBob. Anyways, none of it helped to soothe her, but people still insisted. They had become more interested in alleviating their own collective guilty conscience, stringing the girl along on a gaudy death march masquerading as a parade. The shadow had emerged from yet another ruined husk, and the day had come. Pearl was not any more ready than in the days before. She wailed, shaking the ground beneath her as she tried to flee, only to be brought to ground by a net gun. When the time finally came, it took 20 members of Bikini Bottom PD to restrain the girl as they chained her to the bed of the truck. They drove her to the epicenter of what had been dubbed an emergence event. Pearl choked, screamed, and pleaded for mercy as she locked eyes on the ruined corpse of the cleanup crew member. The shadow stood suspended in fragments all around her, ready to invade her form and destroy her from within. Krabs had become apologetic, crying and blubbering for so long that his arms and legs had gone numb, followed quickly by his very mind. Krabs grabbed a shotgun and marched toward Bikini Bottom. He intercepted the truck, carrying his daughter just off Con Street. Far too late. Pearl lay, already bloated to the very threshold of recognizability as the truck sped on its way. Krabs raised the shotgun, taking off the driver's head with a spray of iron. The truck careened off the road, crashing into the house of Squidward. Mr. Krabs. Yeah, this story does rule. I thought maybe you had read it, Rude Dude, because you were like, oh, this is the Bikini Bottom story. But yeah, now Mr. Krabs is like, going on like a death, whatever. Like a Liam Neeson fucking, whatever death mission to find his daughter, or to get his daughter back even though she's already infected. Mr. Krabs, blind with rage, stalked up to the truck. He yanked the police fish from the passenger seat, casting it into the ground and ramming the barrel of the shotgun into his mouth. The fish tried to beg, tried to tell the furious crab that he had hurt his leg, but his words died around the cold steel of the gun as it tapped his uvula. The shot rang out, spraying gray matter across Squidward's anemones. Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I love it. Then another as Mr. Krabs took his own life. The pellets of the shotgun shell bounced viciously within the crab's chitinous carapace, shredding flesh and organs as they went. Squidward was the first to find the scene, collapsing to his knees in shock at the carnage before registering Pearl's pained groaning and the faintest trace of black ichor radiating from where she lay in the back of his truck. His horror turned to panic as he realized the depth of his situation before them. SpongeBob! SpongeBob! The squid pounded desperately on his neighbor's door. SpongeBob! Yes, Squidward? SpongeBob had answered the door in a widow's garb, clearly still mourning his beloved friend. SpongeBob! The truck carrying that thing. You mean Pearl? SpongeBob interrupted. Yes, the truck carrying Pearl just crashed into my house, SpongeBob. You have to help me get her out of here. He was nearly in tears as he spoke, but SpongeBob was fully there. His eyes sprayed tears forth like fire hydrants at the sight of Mr. Krabs' lifeless husk propelling Squidward through the air and into the cab of the truck. SpongeBob climbed in, still sobbing just a moment later. Where do we go? He asked through the tears. Squidward had yet to consider that. I know. We'll take her to rock bottom. They won't even know she's there. They backed up, turned back onto the road, and sped off. They drove for what felt like hours as the girl chained to the bed of the truck made gurgling, groaning wails As they undid her chains and cast her off into the darkness of the trench, they realized in horror that the emergence had already begun. They climbed back into the truck as quickly as they could, carefully picking their way through the strands of sinuous black, and sped back towards Bikini Bottom. As they drove, the shadow rose high on the tide, drifting slowly but certainly back towards the small town. The neighbors prayed desperately for the cloud of oily death to change course, but it refused. They arrived home, knowing all was for naught. Is this the part where SpongeBob gets the gun and just kills him and Squidward? Ah, cheer up, Squidward. We'll figure something out. SpongeBob wished that he could believe his own blatant lies. No, SpongeBob. No, SpongeBob. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. Squidward grabbed Mr. Krabs' shotgun from the ground where it fell, pressed the barrel to his skull, and pulled the trigger as he finished the sentence. The cephalopod's brain matter stung in SpongeBob's eyes and tasted like wet rubber. He lay down there amidst the ruined bodies of people he loved and passed out. When he woke, the sun was shining. Clams were chirping. He dug a piece of gray matter from the corner of his eye, flicking it away with a ugh. He stood up, knees aching, and looked around. There was no sign of the shadow in the morning sky. When he turned on the news, it said the disaster was over. But that wasn't really true. Sure, the monster had gone away, but the scars remained. SpongeBob had no job, no friends, and no trust left in his community. The cold way in which they'd chosen to sacrifice one of their own, and the malice behind their decision that it would be Pearl, it had all shaken him in a way he couldn't forget. For 10 years he lingered, filter feeding in the streets. He had been grateful to Mrs. Puff for taking Gary in after his home was foreclosed on, though she didn't allow him to visit. His life had become completely bereft of joy. Stony Flayward was a rich flounder from the North Atlantic who had invested hugely in experimental medicines. It was one of his experiments which slipped loose from the Deepwater Horizon facility, claiming the life of Patrick, Pearl, and the rest. His involvement in the tragedy was covered up, and of course, he was never prosecuted. Okay. So it was a monster, and it was like, just goes to show, the rich always win. They always find a way out. Flayward had been on a meteoric rise to political stardom in recent years, making frequent campaign stops in Bikini Bottom, where he spoke of hope and prosperity. I believe in a world, he spoke in a practiced monotone, where fish of every shape and size can live their lives free of fear. On a nearby rooftop, SpongeBob moved the crosshairs over Flaywood's heart and said, sorry, pal, I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. Fuck yeah, SpongeBob becomes an assassin at the end, dude. Oh my god. Which, I have to say, in today's climate of political violence is a little edgy, but that is what creepypastas are all about. They are school shooter energy. They are, yes, is this maybe, did SpongeBob kind of turn into a bit of a Luigi Mangione at the end? Yes, but, I'm here for it. I love it. I think that is to take someone so pure of heart, so willing to believe in the goodness of his fellow man and his fellow fish and society, and to take that creature and bring him to the level where he is a taxi driver esque, uh, you know, vigilante who is going to kill the person who is responsible for destroying not only his life, but really, I mean, destroyed the town that he loved and all the people that he loved, right? Killed them all. To have SpongeBob go through this crucible of losing everything, and be left with the only sensible option, which is to stop and to take the life of the person who so callously took everything from him and got nothing but you know, denial and cover up and continued to rise, continued to thrive and profit, and for SpongeBob to get some form of revenge is pretty epic. Is a pretty dope. I mean, it's an odyssey. It's an odyssey of how to take the most pure of heart and how society can just beat a person down until eventually their only option are to swim in the gutters with along with the vermin that exists there. And for SpongeBob to get radicalized, I think is pretty epic and a pretty poignant commentary on what is going on in our society today. So two thumbs up. This was fucking awesome. I love it. Obviously, it could not be an actual SpongeBob episode, especially with how it ended. But if there's like any, I think somebody should make like whatever, So I think Verdant should try to get like somebody who can animate, and obviously, it would get copyright struck into hell and all that stuff. But if they could make like an episode of this and, maybe just change it, like change this into a screenplay and into a script and have maybe some more dialogue here and there and some more jokes and stuff like that. But if they could make this into like a 30-minute, 40-minute, or however long, I mean, it could be shorter. It could be like 10 minutes. I don't know how it would translate. But if they could make this into a cartoon, I would make the shit out. I would promote the shit out of it. I think this would make an awesome, like, whatever fan made episode of like SpongeBob, sorry, pal, I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. Radicalize. SpongeBob on his Luigi Mangione arc is pretty epic. And just so funny when you're a person who grew up watching SpongeBob. Like, I don't think I can state enough how much this makes me happy when, like, you have the story like Squidward's Sewer Slide, right? Which is very funny and obviously written by like, some like edgy kid or teenager, and it's funny for like completely different reasons. But to have an epic story like this where SpongeBob is confronted with all these horrible things, and it's just awesome, and for it to be like SpongeBob is the one who ultimately loses faith in humanity and all that shit is kind of epic, because that is the one thing that always is that SpongeBob always maintain, like, Patrick's dumb, but Patrick's good too, but SpongeBob always maintains that like good heart, right? And he always like, he'll always have a smile and he'll always see the best in people. And that is what makes SpongeBob SpongeBob. And to have that you know, to have a story where it completely gets he gets beaten down until whatever it's on. Like, it's honestly epic, and it honestly makes me yeah, it just makes me happy because it's like it's so funny that this sponge uh gets whatever gets flipped on its head, you know, gets whatever, gets black pilled, so to speak, you know. It is so funny. Yeah, it's just great, and and it's a really like I said, it hit all the like tropes of different like creepypastas so well that I feel like I don't know, I just feel like this story was great, and just as it is, I love it. But I honestly feel like someone could totally take this and run with it and be like, you know, the video of like SpongeBob becomes black pilled, you know, could be like a thing that whatever people that could catch on, you know what I mean? People, I think people would love it. You know, I love it, and that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, it was just like probably a lot of meme pictures. Yeah, awesome. I love it. I love it. Oh, one thing I was gonna say earlier, and it kind of just, well, okay, never mind. I'm not gonna mention it. It doesn't really make sense now. Um, we moved on, but yeah, now let's get into. I'm gonna go grab. I'm gonna go grab uh a ginger ale real quick. And then let's read this. I believe this is the poem. So and it's got 160 upvotes, which is really awesome for poetry on on Creepcast website, like horror poetry. I'm excited to read it, but let me just go grab a ginger ale and I'll be right back.
Oh, they just black out the whole face.
Why even just keep a fucking stick figure guy up there if you have to? Just a dude in a suit. You're like, trust me, he's very pretty in real life.
He's
very
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Trust us.
But we can't show you because you might thought form him.
I will say, Bernard Hayes is a name to remember. You don't
Bernard
have to. I'll remember it
Hayes.
for you, but it will come back.
Introducing the Thoughtform Manifester. The Thoughtform Manifester is able to create truly independent and self-sustaining thoughtform entities from the minds of select willing participants.
So I love this machine. It's a very Jurassic Park vibe to it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's the idea of like, oh, well, normally this process takes decades of religious learning and meditation and, you know, understanding of the consequences of your actions. So we decided that we can skip all of those steps with a really big machine that makes a thought form happen all at once to people who have never heard of it before.
Sit in your Secret Labs gaming chair and we're going to put a UFO over.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that really was that was so much fun. And I loved how much it included like all the classic characters and the classic like 3 hours later voice. But then it also didn't get so caught up in just trying to include all this SpongeBob lore that it forgot that it just was a horror story, you know, set in SpongeBob's world. Like, I think a lot of people, when they do those fan things, they just try to include, they're just trying to hit all the notes of like, and then I need to talk about this thing, and then I need to, but it hit all the Easter eggs and stuff, but it did it in like a really natural way where it kind of made sense, you know. Yeah. I did not think I was gonna like that story as much as I did. Like I said, it kicked ass, and it really made me want to. It's an odyssey for sure. Uh, I all the more stand by my uh relating it to like Of Mice and Men and all these other fucking, Taxi Driver, all these other, great works of art. It totally, like you say, equally important, Um but yeah, let's check out this poem. I'm excited. Our first horror poem on the stream. If nothing scares you. You say that nothing scares you anymore. That the rotten things which make their lingerings in dark, forbidden corners of the periphery have lost all their allure. Less of what they were as we grow into something more. Or rending claws, gnashing jaws. Things we saw in times before the wall, the bull, the hammer, or the shoe. What fear are they to us when we can tear the atom in two? You say that nothing scares you. So let me ask what you would do if on some foggy, starless night you heard a knocking at your door and politely went to answer and saw there before you an unsightly specter speaking out sincerely to your heart. Excuse me, my dear brother. I'm afraid my car won't start. Can I use your phone to call a truck out for a tow? There's a party at the morgue tonight, and I simply got to go. And looking in the sockets where his eyeballs used to be, decided that you judged him as an honest one indeed. Would you let him use your phone, or would you slam the door and flee? I would help him out. What harm could a skeleton so eloquent presume to be? But would your answer change if that specter there was me? Should your answer change if the specter there was me? Ghosts and ghouls have lots of rules by which we know their game, but I am flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. If nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where we are. Okay, I'm going to read it again because poetry, you don't just read a poem once, ever, in my opinion. And I mean, I guess if it's like a really long, whatever, like the Odyssey or something like that, I guess you can just read it once. But any poem that's just like this, poetry, first of all, you should always read it out loud. Always. Like, you can read it in your head, but poetry is meant to be heard, like audibly, and it's meant to be performed. So I'm mentioning this for people who want to write poetry, but then also want to if you're just reading a poetry like book or something, you're picking it up and you just want to read a random poem. You should always you can read it in your head once, and you should read it out loud. And then I would usually say, if it interests you, if you like it, read it again out loud or just read it multiple times, because you will catch things that you didn't the first time. You need to hear the music of the words just as much as you need to understand the meaning of it. You know what I'm saying? Both are important in poetry. Both are equally as important in poetry. And I feel like that's why a lot of people, when they just read it on the page or when they just hear spoken word, like poems and stuff like that, like it's not the same thing as a written poem. And it's important. It's important to get the music of the words as much as it is to, and it's why I'm not playing any music right now. Like the words are the music, you know what I mean? So it's important that so I'm probably gonna read this at least 3 times, but so if nothing scares you, but sorry. If Nothing Scares You by VerdantVoidling. You say that nothing scares you anymore, that the rotten things which make their lingerings in the dark, forbidden corners of the periphery, that rotten things which make their lingerings in the dark, forbidden corners of the periphery have lost all their allure. Less of what they were as we grow into something more. For rending claws, gnashing jaws, things we saw in times before the wall, the bull, the hammer, or the shoe. What fear are they to us when we can tear the atom in two? You say that nothing scares you, so let me ask you what you would do if on some foggy, starless night you heard a knocking at your door and politely went to answer, saw right there before you an unsightly specter speaking out sincerely to your heart. Excuse me, my dear brother, I'm afraid my car won't start. Can I use your phone to call a truck out for a tow? There's a party at the morgue tonight, and I've simply got to go. Thank you. Thank you, rude dude. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Excuse me, my dear brother. I'm afraid my car won't start. Can I use your phone to call a truck out for a tow? There's a party at the morgue tonight, and I've simply got to go. And looking in the sockets where his eyeballs used to be, decided that you judged him as an honest one indeed. Would you let him in to use your phone, or would you slam the door and flee? I would help him out. What harm could a skeleton so eloquent presume to be? Would your answer change if that specter there was me? Should your answer change if that specter there was me? Ghosts and ghouls have lots of rules by which we know their game, but I am flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. If nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where we are. All right, one more time. No distractions. One more time. You say that nothing scares you anymore, that the rotten things which make their lingerings in dark, forbidden corners of the periphery have lost all their allure. Less of what they were as we grow into something more. For rending claws, gnashing jaws, things we saw in times before the wall, the bull, the hammer, or the shoe. What fear are they to us when we can tear the atom in two? You say that nothing scares you, So let me ask, what would you do if on some foggy, starless night you heard a knocking at your door and politely went to answer and saw right there before you an unsightly specter speaking out sincerely to your heart? Excuse me, my dear brother, I'm afraid my car won't start. Can I use your phone to call a truck out for a tow? There's a party at the morgue tonight, and I've simply got to go. And looking in the sockets where his eyeballs used to be, decided that you judged him as an honest one indeed. Would you let him in to use your phone, or would you slam the door and flee? I would help him out. What harm could a skeleton so eloquent presume to be? But would your answer change if the specter there was me? Should your answer change if the specter there was me? Ghosts and ghouls have lots of rules by which we know their game. But I am flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. If nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where we are. Okay, so I like this poem a lot, and I'll give you a few reasons why. First of all, it does something that I do in my poetry that I kind of have always done, but I like, is it starts off less. It's there are still rhymes in the beginning, but it starts off more conversational, and with longer lines, and then it finds its meter and its rhythm to the end, to where that last line hits beautifully. I mean, this last line, honestly, this whole last stanza is amazing, is great, but this last, like, perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. If nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where we are. It's a great declaration for the end of the poem, and an end of a poem that really wants to say something. Should, like, a poem, if it's not like teaching you something, it should at least have an opinion about what the idea that it's suggesting to you. The idea that this poem is suggesting to us is, if nothing scares you, or if you're one of these people who's like, well, everything's just so fucked up that I just don't really care. If apathy has taken hold in your life, right? Whatever, the world's so fucked up, school shootings, blah blah blah. You know, we can split the atom, science has come so far, everything. There's all these possibilities, and so if you are somebody that thinks of all that and just kind of goes, well, it's all kind of so terrifying that none of it is, right? And if less of what they were as we grow into something more. Yeah, if nothing really scares you because, those dark hidden things in the corners have kind of lost their mystery, right? The poem the poem kind of explains that well and explains that feeling well. Rending claws, gnashing jaws, things we saw in times before the wall, the bull, the hammer, or the shoe. What fear are they to us when we can tear the atom in two? What fear are animals? What fear are, all these sort of things. So then the poem proposes this very simple scenario, right? Of so if you say that nothing scares you, let me ask you what you would do if a specter, and it could be a ghost or it could just be a shadowy person, but it's like, what would you do if a ghost comes to your door and asks to use your phone? Are you going to let the ghost in to use your phone, or are you going to lock your door and run away and hide? And obviously a lot of people would go like, oh, that would be so scary for a ghost to come to my, right? Imagine that. And I was wondering, when the poem got to this point, I was kind of wondering what assertion it was going to make, because it was like, it was kind of like, I was maybe wondering if it was going to be like, a ghost could kill you kind of a thing. And it's like, well, of course that would be scary. And it does this thing of it proposes the supernatural, and it says, what if this supernatural thing happens to you and comes to your door? Would you hide or would you go? And then it's like, or would you help it out? And then it says, I would help him out. What harm could a skeleton so eloquent presume to be? Would your answer change if that specter there was me? So to me, this is saying, would your answer change if I was the ghost, say? So like, maybe the ghost. Maybe it's that. Or maybe it's saying, now imagine that it's not a specter and it's just a person, creature of flesh and bone, something tangible. And then it says, should your answer change if the specter there was me? Ghosts and ghouls have lots of rules by which we know their game. Meaning, we know the myths and the stories, right, that guide these things, these creatures of the dark. We kind of know what to expect, right? As much as they might be terrifying, they're also predictable and they're understandable, because they are these creatures of fantasy and myth, and if they're not straight up logical, they're they're predictable, but they're also like they're less terrifying because they're supposed to be mysterious and scary. They're less terrifying because we know going into it that is their intention. That is their purpose, so to speak, in literature and the world, right? You see a skeleton, you see a ghost, it's meant to be scary, right? Then it says, but I am flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. A very creepy line. Very creepy line. And this is where the poem turns and it makes its assertion, where it's kind of it's not proposing to us that what if I came to your door as a ghost. What it's saying is, what if I came to your door as just a man, exactly what I am, a human being. What if I came to your door? You don't know my name. In other words, you have no idea who I am, what I could do, what kind of person I am. And then it says, perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car, which is just a very creepy idea to be like, oh, I'm reading this random poem of this random person, and then all of the sudden, they say, perhaps I've watched you get in your car, and it's just it's a very knee jerk moment where you as the experiencer of the poem, as the listener, the reader, you know, you want to look over your shoulder because you're like, oh fuck, I guess this person's right. Like, they could have seen me one day. I don't know where they live. I don't know who they are. They're totally right. And then it says, if nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where you are, meaning you're in the real world with human beings, creatures that are entirely unpredictable, creatures that don't linger in the shadows, creatures that aren't malice up front, that aren't strictly speaking fear, but that are capable of all the horrors of any ghost, any ghoul, anything, right? And so essentially, to me, what this poem is saying is like, if nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten that you are in the real world. This is real. As much as people want to say, like, oh, simulation, blah, 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 bullshit like that. Even if this was a simulation, this is the only real simulation that there is ever going to be. This is your life. This is the real shindig. So if nothing scares you anymore, then you've forgotten where you are, so to speak, that you've forgotten not only what man is capable of, but you've kind of forgotten the stakes, so to speak, is what this poem is portraying to me. It's saying that the ghosts and ghouls, they have their rules, right? And within those stories, or within, like, if you're on a ghost tour and let's say you see a ghost, you know that, like, oh, I saw it for a second and then it was gone. And that's kind of the rule. Like, that's probably as creepy as that's gonna get, right? But walking down the street on any given day, any person around, someone could snatch you off the street. Anything could happen. And so, to me, it's kind of reminding us of where not only the real fear lies, like with the unpredictable, the grotesque unpredictability of humanity, but it's also reminding you that, like, fear is important, because fear is like fear is your survival instinct working, and it's like, it's making sure that you want to stay alive, right? It's the method by which your body, like, puts you in a situation to where you can do that, right? You get afraid, you get, your senses get heightened, all that stuff. And so, to me, the poem does a really good job of kind of exposing you to that without going like, wouldn't it be so scary if instead of a ghost or whatever, a person just showed up and killed you? Someone broke into your house, whatever. Like, it doesn't fully go there, but yet it's still, in such a poignant kind of way, it reminds you of the, I don't know, I guess I would say, like, the all encompassing possibilities of fear when you allow yourself to understand what there really is to be afraid of. You know what I mean? And so I think it's a really cool poem. I think it takes the horror into a really pervasive, all encompassing way where it, like, do you ever think, like, oh, thank you, thank you. You ever think, like, what, like a woman walking down the street, right? I remember as a man, I've lived my whole life as a man. I've never been anything else, right? That's all I know, being a boy and a man. But one day I remember talking with some of my female coworkers and just, they were talking about how they have their pepper spray and whatever. And I remember one of the girl goes like, yeah, I'm just terrified that like I'm going to get like kidnapped and like trafficked. And I was like, you're terrified? Like, has something happened to you? Has someone tried to take you? If. And she's like, no, but like, you hear these stories where like somebody gets marked as like, oh, a single female lives at home, and like that's a real thing, and that's a real fear that women like walk down the street. Not all women, not all the time, but I'm just saying it's a very real fear that like women especially have, that they're like, oh, someone can just come up and hurt me at any time. And men have it too. It's true of men, but men have a lot more hubris, right? Women, in some ways they're smarter because they know that like, because they're taught that like, oh, you need to be safe. You shouldn't be out at night, stuff like that. Whereas men, it's like, we have this hubris to think that like, well, other than somebody coming up with a gun and shooting me, like no one's just going to attack me for no reason, or no one's going to try to kidnap me. Whereas like women, women get trafficked more than men. It happens to men too, but I'm saying men don't think about that the same way usually. But anyways, my point in bringing this up was that like she kind of explained her fear, her reasons for it, and she's like, I'm a small woman, you know what I mean? Like, I'm somewhat of an easy target. So just when I like go out and like, I'm walking down the street and like someone's following me and I'm alone, like it's very scary. And I was just like, and it was just kind of a moment for me where I was like, damn, yeah, like I as a guy don't like think about being afraid that often. Like unless something actually scary happens or whatever, it's like I'm not just walking down the street, or I'm not just like walking around my apartment complex going to my mailbox or something and getting afraid, right? Whereas like the girl's like, no, anytime I leave my house, I have my pepper spray, So I'm like, they think about that. And that fear is real and it's pervasive and it's constant, And so to me, that's kind of what this poem is reminding us of, is of that very real, very constant fear that people so often ignore or forget, but it's out there. It's a real thing. Some people live with it every day. People, survivors, things happen to people, and it's totally real and it's totally justifiable, which makes it all the more terrifying, right? Here, let me get to these comments. But yeah, so that's what I think the poem, it reminded me of the female thing to bring up, but I think the poem does it in such a smart way where it kind of reminds you that if you're not afraid, you have completely forgotten what it means, the stakes of being alive mean. You know what I mean? That's my interpretation of it. I think it understands its audience very well and successfully calls calls us out on our bullshit. We all love scary stories, but we don't really find anything scary because we understand it, like ghosts and ghouls, but leaving the threat, yeah. Yeah, but leaving the threat up for interpretation is great. Nothing scares me more than the unknown. Exactly. And it does leave it up to you. And I don't think the poem is straight up saying, I'm going to get you. But it is saying that I'm a person and you're a person. So if you think that it's impossible that I could get you, you've completely forgotten. You know, you're completely fucking you're naive, you know. And that is what is scary about it. And that is what is fun about it. And that's why it's a good poem. And circling back to what I was saying earlier, like about the kind of form of like, so it's the poem starts with like some slant rhymes and stuff at the beginning. You say nothing scares you anymore. That the rotten things make their lingerings in the dark, forbidden corners, periphery have lost their allure. Anymore allure. It doesn't really rhyme, but there's this. Well, it does a little bit. It is a slant rhyme. I was right about that. Because it has this RE, right? We got this anymore, and then allure, and then RE. Yeah, it's maybe not even a slant rhyme. It might be an exact rhyme. But my point is the lines go from like, and the whole poem is really conversational, and so I like it. VerdantVoidling, we got to talk poetry, man, because I like this. I think your style of poetry is my style, which really excites me. Less of what they were as we grow into something more, you know. And it's got these internal rhymes: rendering claws, gnashing jaws, hammer or shoe. We can tear in two. So my point is, but then it's got some lines that are just like almost full sentences, right? On some foggy, starless night, you heard a knocking at your door and politely went to answer and saw right there before you an unsightly specter speaking out sincerely to your heart. That whole line, it didn't really rhyme with anything from the lines before. And it just kind of went on and proposed you the scenario, right? But then it goes immediately into this internal rhyme with the next line. It says, unsightly specter speaking out sincerely to your heart. Excuse me, my dear brother. I'm afraid my car won't start. So then there is this really nice rhyme. And the poem, in a very smart way, I think, kind of lulls you into like, oh, I'm just, you know, asking you about, or I'm just, you know, talking to you about things that scare you, right? You know, and it's kind of, then it's like, let me propose to you a scenario. And this is such a great rhyme. I'm afraid can I use your phone to call a truck for a tow? There's a party at the morgue tonight and I've simply got to go. Very basic, very like, you know, so simple. We're not trying to rhyme like any crazy, you know, these are simple one syllable rhymes. But this whole line about there's a party at the morgue tonight and I've simply got to go. It's like, that's creepy if a ghost came to your door and is telling you it's got to go to a party at the morgue. Like, it's haunting, right? In a very fun, kind of spooky, you know, whatever sort of way. And looking in the sockets where his eyeballs used to be, decided that you judged him an honest one indeed. Would you let him use your phone, or would you slam the door and flee? A great like triplet of rhymes there, even though it's all just one like line of the poem or maybe two lines, depending on how you look at it. And it being on Reddit, I'm kind of not, I'm not getting super specific with like what is and isn't a complete line of poetry. It just, then it's I would help him out. No rhyme there, right? Nothing. It doesn't. It's just a simple. Well, this is what I would do in this situation, and this is why. What harm could a skeleton so eloquent, great fun internal rhyme? Skeleton so eloquent. It's not quite a perfect rhyme, but there's like some fun assonance, I think, and consonants going on in here with the ella and ello, and then quent and on, so it's a fun kind of internal limericky moment in the poem that I think really gives it the music that I was talking about earlier, right? What harm could a skeleton so eloquent presume to be? But would your answer change if that specter there was me? And it kind of does this nice little. It's like a little like. And it's kind of that skeleton so eloquent presumed to be, but would your answer change if it was me? And so it's like it gets a little complicated, and it's like a little, and then it very quickly peters out and goes, but would it change if it was me? And that is so fun, because you're like, what do you mean if you're the ghost? Like, what do you think? And then should your answer change if the specter there was me? Ghosts and ghouls have lots of rules by which we know their game, but I am flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Now we're getting to perfect, a fun, perfect rhyme scheme, but it's also like the poem is doing so well here at giving us its declaration and scaring us and showing us why we should be afraid all at the same time. It's awesome. It's so fun. It's so it's haunting, and the fact that the rhymes kick in kind of a really formulaic, like all these lines are about the same length, and the meter and the way that the rhythm builds, it just makes it bleed into like your soul that much more, and it really makes that fear kind of hit you right at the end, right? But I'm flesh and blood and bone, and you don't know my name. Perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. If nothing scares you anymore, you've forgotten where we are. Very good. I love it. I think it's a great poem. Like I said, because I like poems that, don't get me wrong, like I like a sonnet where it's formulaic the whole way, and down to the syllables, down to like the iambic pentameter, dun 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 dun. But soft what light through yonder window breaks. That's not a. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shakespeare wrote an iambic pentameter, which I still have never fully been able to catalog or like confirm, because there's some parts when I read Shakespeare that it's like I can hear the iambic pentameter, and then other parts where I'm like I can't, but it totally kicks ass at the end and throughout. But my point is the way that that these last lines sink in, and that I like a poem where it kind of here I'll do better if I can just show you an example. Like I like conversational poems, but then I also like where you parts of it are just conversational or even common speak, but then other parts of it's like it peppers in the poetry, and the poetry kind of builds on you to where at first you don't necessarily feel like you're reading a poem, and then by the end you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely a poem. You know what I mean? This is not, I don't want somebody's interpretation of it. I want this is a Raymond Carver poem, but it just says, he says it doesn't look good. He says it looks bad, in fact, real bad. He says I counted 32 of them on one lung before I quit counting them. I said I'm glad. I wouldn't want to hear, or I wouldn't want to know about any more than that. He said, are you a religious man? Do you kneel down in forest groves and let yourself ask for help? When you come to a waterfall, mist blowing against your face and arms, do you stop and ask for understanding at those moments? I said, not yet, but I intend to start today. He said, I'm real sorry. He said, I wish I had some other kind of news to give you. I said, amen, and he said something else I didn't catch, and not knowing what else to do, and not wanting him to have to repeat it, and me to have to fully digest it. I just looked at him for a minute, and he looked back. It was then I jumped up and shook hands with the man who'd just given me something no one else on earth had ever given me. I may have even thanked him, habit being so strong. Now, this poem isn't quite exactly the same as the other one in terms of Raymond Carver doesn't use much rhyming in his poetry. He's one of my favorite poets, but he doesn't. What he does do is he's recounting a very, it's called What the Doctor Said, right? He says it doesn't look good. Says it looks bad, in fact, real bad. So clearly, like, the weight of this poem is like, oh man, he's getting some bad news from a doctor. And then he says, I counted 32 of them on one lung before I quit counting them. I said, I'm glad. I wouldn't want to know about any more being there than that. So it starts off with this very, like, clinical, like, yeah, you've got fucking a lot of tumors on your lungs. I quit counting them. There are so many. And then he said, and then he goes to the, are you a religious man? Do you kneel down in forest groves and let yourself ask for help when you come to a waterfall? Like that is where all of a sudden the poem takes this turn, and like the doctor's like, I hope you've made your peace with God. I hope you have a higher power that you can lean on, because you're gonna die, and it's time to make your peace with the afterlife and with your higher power and all those things, right? And so the poem does a very good job of, it's conversational, but then it also like it has these moments of the beautiful, when you come to a waterfall, mist blowing against your face and arms, you stop and ask for understanding at those moments. I said, not yet, but I intend to start today. And then my other favorite part of this poem is the very end, where it's like, I jumped up and shook hands with this man who'd just given me just given me something no one else on earth had ever given me, meaning his terminal diagnosis, meaning his death sentence, right? And then it's this last line where he's talking about how he's in a hurry to leave because he doesn't want to have to fully digest everything the doctor just told him, so he's in a hurry to leave. He jumps up, shakes his hands, and then he says, I may have even thanked him, habit being so strong. And I think that's a really cool, poignant last line because it's, Raymond Carver was a smoker his whole life. This poem, in some respects, is about his lung cancer. And so, in my opinion, it's about habit too. And then it's just saying that, like, the habit of thanking someone is so strong that you'll thank someone even when they're giving you a death sentence. You know what I mean? And it's just a cool moment of his life that is very realistic, but also beautiful, and it very quickly, like, it very quickly shows the stakes, and then it also, like, really convinces, at least me when I read it, that the moments of life, are important and are mundane all at the same time. They're epic and they're meaningless. You know what I mean? And so the way that this poem is, like, conversational throughout, but then peppers in these really beautiful kind of lines and epic moments, are this poem does something really good too, where it's maybe not about a specific conversation, but, like, with these last lines of, like, perhaps I've seen your face before as you got into your car. It's just such a normal ass everyday, like, maybe I've seen you before driving around or something, It's such a normal thing that you could say, but in the context of this poem, it's so menacing and it's so creepily hints to you that, somebody could be following you, or that somebody knows you even if you don't know them. It's awesome. It kicks ass. It's a great, great poem. It does a good job of, like, not holding itself, because that's another thing, is that, like, people who are first getting into writing poetry, they think that every line has to rhyme, or they have to follow that rhyme scheme to their dying thing. In this poem, it takes the time for the longer lines when it needs it, but then at the end it gets so tight and it hits so perfectly that, yeah, I'm a big fan. I definitely love this poem, and I will certainly read any other poetry you've got, VerdantVoidling. Yeah, but that's it. That's it for my stream today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope hearing me rant about poetry made some sort of sense. I hope hearing me talk about the other stories made some kind of sense. I am going to read a few of these comments real quick just to see. The flow and the rhyme scheme are like a limerick, which I think suits this piece perfectly. This is something that will truly stick with me, and I'll be coming back to it again and again for inspiration. 10 big booms. Boom! Thanks, Rude Dude. I hope so. I hope. I just love that Raymond Carver poem, and so I hope it made sense in the way I was trying to, describe what the poem does well. But honestly, just any excuse I have to talk about that specific Raymond Carver poem, I will probably take, um, because it's one of my favorites, and I think it does a. I think it. If people are daunted by poetry, or like they're not really into real rhymey poetry, or they like to rhyme sometimes, but they don't write an entire poem that rhymes. I think it works well to kind of show you what a poem can do that doesn't even rhyme, but that does have fucking, you know, it has a point, it has like uh real like stakes, and it's a badass poem. If you ask me, Raymond Carver's a badass. It's a badass. I like it. Badass poem. I like it. um, if you're curious, Raymond Carver wrote the short story called "Everything Must Go," which Will Ferrell made into a movie. Check out that movie; it's really good. It's one of Will Ferrell's like better serious roles too. But it's based on a Raymond Carver short story, so check it out. Um, Love the closing line too. Think that last line was what inspired the rest of the poem. Lovely poem. This is fucking solid. Put a smile on my face. That's good. Yeah, definitely. It definitely got me jazzed up too. Of course, of course. I hope you. I hope Verdant. I hope you will watch. It all, because I mean, I liked everything I read today, and if you can't watch the whole stream, I understand, but I'm just happy that we got to talk to you a little bit too, and I'm sorry for streaming while you're at work, of course, but what can I do? It's when I get off work. Yeah, and what I mean, I guess the problem is I don't know if I can. I guess I can try. Oh my, not that. Um, I was gonna take a moment to do a shameless plug for myself for my Instagram, but I don't have Instagram logged on to on my laptop. But I post I post uh the few poems I have posted on my Instagram. But like I have another a poem called "Goat in the Tall Grass." That's a totally different in terms of like what the poem's about. It's not a horror poem at all. But the reason that I bring it up is because it kind of starts off with like that whole. It's just like I want to be a goat in the tall grass, whacking my jaw to the rhythm of the earth. The cold, kind wind dissects our horns and spills across our backs. Hay grows inward, inhaled by munching mulchers, ceaseless and cyclical. A bale resurrects each morning from the splinters of itself, the bale a pillar that marks each new day. But that is not the reason I want to be a. The tall grass is the reason. The eternal song it sings as we jump and frolic in the green sea and sing our bleated bellows in response. Each blade a strand of verdant joy, separately unique, yet wholly ordinary. The tall grass erupts from nothing, strategic in its simplicity. I will cackle and chomp and remain forever within it. That poem didn't have really any rhyming that I hear, that I remember. Yeah, and Gertrude. Honestly, um, I don't know if I had like I don't know if I had that visceral of a reaction to Aunt Gertrude, but I think more because I was like, how the fuck are they gonna kill this monster if it's not already being caught on fire? But as I read through and talked through the end of the story, like I definitely, ripped Aunt Gertrude for sure. Ripped Aunt Gertrude, but also like she's kind of one of those characters where I'm like, well, she should have believed the fucking kids. You know what I mean? Their dad was like hunched over a sink with chunks of him missing. Like, I really don't see any reason why. And the dad was the one who was acting crazy throughout the whole story. So I'm like, I don't see any reason why anyone needs to be like, these kids just need to calm down. It's like, no, I think the kids have every right. Their mom and their dad are now dead. Like, I think everyone else needs to fucking get more upset. um, but yeah, I mean, that was an awesome kill moment, just death moment, in a story. I definitely liked it a lot. I loved it. But yeah, I read my own poem right there as a shameless plug, but to kind of bring up that, like, at the end I have these or at the beginning I have these like longer lines where it gets a little it's just like explaining, what it would like and why I want to be a goat, or what the day in the life of a goat is like. But then I kind of turn halfway through a poem, and I think every good poem kind of has this turn moment, right? And it's like the tall grass is the reason. And I like when I think it's a good quality in a poem when the feelings at the end, when it stays a little shorter and a little punchier at the end. And I felt that so much in your poem, Verdant. So yeah. And funny enough, I used the word verdant in the poem that I just read to you. So anyways, it's Red Death Mask on Instagram if anyone cares. I've only got 2 poems up there right now, but I I find after reading your poem, even if you don't write much poetry, or even if that's your first stab at poetry, I feel a kinship with the type of poet that you are. After reading that, I was like, I fuck with this type of poetry. Because don't get me wrong, a lot of the poetry that I read online, or that because I follow other poets and just stuff, it's like I like a lot of it, or a lot, but very rarely do I go like, oh, I think we have a similar vibe or even style. A lot of the other poems that I read, I just either feel like the poet's very different than me, or I feel um like I don't know, after reading the poem I'm just like, they're doing what they want to do and it's awesome. I just don't know if I enjoy their style of poetry as much as they do. And that's fine. Um his poetry is way more subjective than even I think a lot of people realize. I think a lot of people think you either like poetry or you don't. And my advice is like, I think most people like poetry. It's just a matter, or pretty much all people do. It's just a matter of what type, because there are a lot of different kinds. And so yeah, I read mine real quick at the end just because I kind of wanted to demonstrate how some of the lines in my poem they start off it starts off very like conversational or with these long kind of drawn out lines, and then the lines kind of get short at the end, and it has it has a brevity that I think is supposed to, at least in the poem, make the end of the poem kind of linger, whereas the beginning just kind of flies past you, and then the end's, you know. So, anyways, that's it for today's stream. I hope everybody had fun. Go check out Raymond Carver. He's got some good shit. Go check out VerdantVoidling. Obviously, he's got some great stuff. I think he's even posting new stuff quite often. I know on the Discord and stuff, he's got like people doing new readings of his stuff, and it just seems like he's got new stuff coming out. Like I think maybe the Arbor Lanch. This is maybe one of his newest stories, but very very good stuff. Very cool. Yeah, just thank you so much for letting me read. Thanks, guys. Creepin'. I'll message you back on Discord. I don't know. Maybe we'll hop on a call. We'll see. I might go to sleep. I might eat a yogurt and go to sleep. It just all depends, you know. It just depends. Just depends on what I want to do today. Before I have to work tonight. But I look forward to the 4-day weekend coming up that I have. I look forward to eating turkey and doing Thanksgiving. I hope everyone else is having a good holidays upcoming or whatever. If you're going to celebrate Thanksgiving, if you're not, if you live in another country besides America, I hope you have some form of the holidays coming up, and I hope it's fun. And I encourage, if people want a good Christmas movie to watch, I encourage everyone to watch The Holdovers. I think it's one of the best Christmas movies to come out in the past few years. Funny, got a lot of heart, beautiful story. Paul Giamatti is one of the greatest actors ever. And yeah, it kicks ass. I think, you know, I know that a lot of people for Christmas just kind of watch the same movies, but the same way that people do a lot of different Halloween movies for October and stuff like that, I am kind of the same and have always kind of been the same way about Christmas, but I'm always adding and changing and adding new movies. Like I'll always watch Elf. There are some that I'll always watch, but there are a lot of new ones that I'm kind of looking for and finding all the time. So if anyone else has any good Christmas movie recommendations, you know, let me know in the comments or stuff like that too, because I'm always looking for the next good one. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. I appreciate everybody who, you know, was in the chat and stopped by, and if you watch the VOD, you know, please, you know, leave a comment, tell me a story you think I should cover, or if you're an author, please, you know, message me on Reddit. Here's Mask of the Red Death is my profile. Message me a link to a story, preferably on Reddit, but you know, if it's somewhere else, okay, that's okay. I'll check it out. But yeah, you know, because I have you know, I have stuff that I want to read, but I'm always looking for new stuff. So send it through, and you know, don't be a stranger. Don't be scared to ask for feedback on your stories, because I love to give it. It's why I do these streams. It's fun for me, and I think it's helpful for you guys. So please, don't hesitate. Worst case scenario, I mean, I've never even told anyone no with if they've asked me to read their story. I think worst case scenario, I've said like, I don't think I can get to it right now, or I've said like there have been novels and stuff that people have been, well, I could send you a copy, and I'm like, I'm not gonna read a whole novel on the stream, so I just don't know what the benefit would be, but who knows, maybe one day. Yeah, so anyways, peace out. Auf Wiedersehen. Assalamu alaikum. One love.